Chapter 1305. Now, regardless of whether it was the sun-moon tier or the heavenly body tier, they had all been reduced to the mountain river tier. Even if one possessed a saint tool, it would still be useless, as it would still only be able to unleash the might of the mountain river tier. As for whether it was the consummate level of the mountain river tier or the pinnacle level, that would depend on the level of refinement. The crowd was not in a hurry to enter the mountain river forest. Instead, they all waited at the entrance of the canyon. Perhaps this was the first time that some people had entered the mountain river forest. However, this was not the first time that the mountain river forest had opened. Thus, even if they had never been to the mountain river forest before, they would still have heard some legends about it. First step: choose the 9 kings. The mountain river forest should have been formed from the collision of the regulations of the heaven and earth, yet it was as if the heaven and earth had a spirit that separated the battle of prodigies into 2 stages. Ling Han looked ahead. In front of a huge forest, there were 9 platforms of various sizes. The first step was to be carried out on the platform. After 3 days, those who were still standing on the platform would receive the blessing of the heavens and earth. After another 3 days, these 9 people would be sent into the forest to participate in the second round of competition to be crowned King of Kings. Only one person could win on each platform. If the number exceeded this number, then no matter how many people were on the platform, they would all be eliminated. The 9 kings who fought to the end would obtain the blessing of the heavens and earth, tempering their bodies, causing their physiques to improve tremendously. They would also be able to communicate with the heavens and earth and comprehend the profoundness of the profound arts. Their comprehension would increase, lasting for countless years. It was precisely because of such benefits that generations of geniuses would travel thousands of miles to come here. Just the treasures that the upper echelons of the 2 realms had brought out weren't enough, and just fighting for glory wasn't enough either. However, not every 2-realm battlefield had the mountain river forest and the sun-moon valley. Thus, it was understandable that the North Emperor and the Stone Emperor, the 2 kings among kings, had appeared. In addition, if one obtained first place in the final competition among the 9 kings, they would be blessed once more. However, each person could only receive 2 blessings at most, and they were calculated separately. One was to become one of the 9 kings, and the other was to become a king among kings. If one became one of the 9 kings twice, then they would not be qualified for the second time, and could only fight to become a king among kings. Therefore, if one was able to become a king among kings, they normally wouldn't come here again. It would be a pure waste of opportunity. Now that the 9 platforms had yet to open, everyone could only wait below the platform. At this point, even young king tiers like Yang Lin and the Cloud Maiden didn't dare to act rashly. If 2 king tiers chose the same platform, it would be fine if one of them was willing to concede, but if they were in a deadlock, then both of them would be eliminated. Although the Sun-Moon Valley also had a similar competition, and the good fortune of the mountain river forest couldn't be compounded, which meant that there would only be 2 opportunities every 77,777 years, who wouldn't want to obtain this kind of good fortune as soon as possible. Thus, the kings would try their best to disperse and avoid fighting each other in advance. They would wait until the battle of the kings among kings to start a bloody battle. Ling Han's gaze swept across the room and he began to count with his fingers. On the immortal realm side, those who had definitely cultivated to the pinnacle level included Yang Lin, the Cloud Maiden, Yu Ying, Faceless, the North Emperor, and the Stone Emperor. Adding him, that would be a total of 7. On the Netherworld side, there were only 2 who had arrived, Qi Huangji and Ao Xiun. Then, if he wanted the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden to occupy a spot among the 9 kings, he would have to defeat one of these 9 people. Ling Han fixed his gaze on Ao Xiun. After the platform was activated, the battles would continue for 3 days. During this period, anyone could ascend the platform to battle, but once they were defeated, they would not be able to ascend the platform again for about 15 minutes. Furthermore, if they were defeated 3 times, they would completely lose the right to challenge. This was a rule that could be used. He could first guard the platform, and when the 3rd day was about to end, he would then have the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden challenge him. If he deliberately lost, then after 15 minutes, he could go and battle Ao Xiun and sweep him off the platform. As long as he calculated the time, Aoziun would not have enough time to ascend the platform to challenge the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. However, were there really only 2 king tiers that had cultivated to the pinnacle level in the netherworld? Ling Han shook his head. If he subtracted the Stone Emperor, the North Emperor, and himself, who had come from another galaxy, there were 4 king tiers in the immortal realm, and the netherworld was not any weaker than the immortal realm. Then, there should be a considerable number of young king tiers. He searched. Perhaps such king tiers had not arrived yet. "Don't mind me," the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said. She and Ling Han had a telepathic connection and had already guessed his thoughts. Ling Han smiled and said, "If you can obtain the blessing of fortune this time, perhaps you can advance into the pinnacle level." The heavenly phoenix divine maiden shook her head and said, "Easier said than done." She knew her own limits. Without cultivating to the pinnacle level, it was impossible for her to have the right to exchange blows with a true king tier. Perhaps with the power of her bloodline, she could battle an opponent in the early stage of the pinnacle level, but that would really require luck. "Wife, don't be anxious. In any case, we have 3 days to observe," Ling Han consoled her. However, very soon Ling Han frowned. That was because 2 more king tiers had come from the netherworld. One had the head of a golden lion, and the other seemed to be formed from smoke. They did not have a fixed form and were constantly changing, so there was naturally no appearance to speak of. The king tier with the head of a golden lion was called Tuobadong, and the one in the form of smoke was called Tangu. The moment they appeared, the prodigies of the netherworld shook their heads. It was naturally because they recognized the identities of these 2 people, and realized that it was too difficult to obtain the position of one of the 9 king tiers. Ling Han decided to act according to plan. As long as he could hold on for 3 days, it would be fine, and he felt that as long as he did not encounter the North Emperor, Stone Emperor, and Qi Huangji, this would be a very simple matter. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden could not win against him in an argument, so she could only nod and agree. However, her heart was filled with pride. Her lover was so domineering and mighty, causing her heart to soften. There were still people coming in one after another, but there were no king tiers. Everyone sat cross-legged on the ground, making the final adjustments. Very soon, the battle for the king tier's path would begin. After another day, the path that they had come from suddenly became dim and actually disappeared from sight. It was as if this gorge had never existed. Those who came for the first time were all greatly shocked, but those who had come before were incredibly calm. This was the mountain river forest locking itself, and would not allow anyone to enter again. At the same time, the fog that enveloped the 9 platforms also dissipated. This signified that the battle for the 9 king tiers had officially begun. Hee. The Stone Emperor was the first to leap out, and he occupied a platform. He once again returned to his appearance of being no more than 3 inches tall. It seemed like this should be his true size. The size of an ordinary person was supported by his origin power, just like the current Ling Han. The North Emperor was the second. He did not compete with the Stone Emperor, but rather landed on another platform and sat down. There was a saber placed on his lap, and he stared at it intently. It was as if this saber was the Tao of heaven and earth. An astonishing fighting spirit flickered in Qi Huangji's eyes, and the red sun above his head radiated with divine light, causing others to be unable to open their eyes. He stared at the Stone Emperor and North Emperor for a while, and then chose to step onto the 3rd platform. This was still not the time to battle with these 2 powerful opponents. Chapter 1306. The 3 kings among kings had chosen their platforms first, which made it much easier for the other kings to choose. All they had to do was avoid these 3. "Brother Ling, I'll be taking my leave first," Faceless said. With a long shout, he stepped onto a platform. The kings leaped out one after another, their speed extremely fast. There were more than 9 king tiers here, so there would definitely be king tier geniuses who would clash in advance. This was something many geniuses wanted to avoid. Thus, they all wanted to quickly occupy a platform and display their prowess so that other kings wouldn't dare to challenge them. On the other hand, if he was too slow, he would only be able to pick a king to fight, and that would put him in a passive position. Of course, there were benefits to being slow as well. One could pick on this soft persimmon, and even team up with others. However, the king would probably disdain to do such a thing. Ling Han wasn't in a hurry. He decided to observe first. The current 9 kings had appeared. In the immortal realm, it was the North Emperor, Stone Emperor, Faceless, Yang Lin, and the Cloud Maiden. In the Netherworld, it was Qi Huangji, Tuoba Dong, Tangu, and Ao Ziun. The battle on the platform did not have the rule of one-on-one. It was completely possible for one to swarm out. Hence, after a short period of silence, several dozen geniuses of the immortal realm ascended the platform in unison, and joined hands to challenge Tuoba Dong, Tangu, and Ao Ziun. Meanwhile, on the immortal realm's side, aside from the North Emperor and the Stone Emperor, the other 3 Netherworld realm geniuses had also joined forces to attack them. Everyone only had 3 chances to fail. Thus, as long as they could team up and kill a king 3 times, they would be able to eliminate this king. There would always be some lucky ones who would be able to take advantage of the situation. With this blessing, he might even be able to cultivate to the extreme realm and step into the king realm. Then, the next time he entered the Sun Moon Valley, he would be able to challenge a king among kings. But what is a king? Only those who were invincible among their peers had the right to be called a king. Moreover, all 9 of the people on the stage had reached the pinnacle realm. Under the circumstances where they had the advantage in terms of cultivation level, it was impossible for them to make up for the difference in numbers. Faceless, Yang Lin, Tuoba Dong, and the others all displayed their prowess. Ping, ping, pung, it was as if a goddess was scattering flowers on the stage, and all the geniuses were struck down one by one. These geniuses all had ugly expressions on their faces. Before encountering a king tier, they were all the overlords of a region, and no one in the same generation could rival them. Even the experts of the older generation had been crushed by them, but after coming here, it was their turn to swallow the bitter fruit of being defeated by someone of the same cultivation level. In this place it was very fair. Everyone was in the mountain river tier, and if you did not cultivate to the pinnacle level, that was because you were too useless. This kind of understanding caused many geniuses to become dispirited, but there were also some geniuses who worked hard and swore to cultivate to the pinnacle of their current great realm. The higher one's cultivation level, the more difficult it was to cultivate the pinnacle level. Thus, if one could only cultivate the pinnacle level once, then even if their cultivation level was the same, the pinnacle level of the Sun Moon tier would definitely be more awesome than the pinnacle level of the Mountain River tier, and the pinnacle level of the Heavenly Body tier would far surpass the pinnacle level of the Sun Moon tier. There's a long way to go. Talent was one aspect, but tenacity was also something that a martial artist could not lack. What geniuses lacked was tenacity. Because of their high talent, their path would be too smooth from a young age. They would not suffer any setbacks. Once they encountered a great loss, they would not be able to recover. After a while, Yu Ying from the immortal realm finally made his move, issuing a challenge to Ao Ziun from the Netherworld. Yu Ying lived up to her name. She was as bright as a bright moon, beautiful, elegant, and untainted by a speck of dust. She wore a long moon-white dress, and with every step she took, she was as graceful as a fairy, causing one's heart to thump with excitement, yet also not daring to profane her. This was a moon goddess and could only be watched from afar. Yet Ao Ziun did not look moved at all. He shook his spear and said, "I have long heard that the Blue Cloud Imperial Empire has an unparalleled genius, but I have never fought her. Today, my wish has finally been fulfilled." Because the regulations of the 2 realms were different, the people of the immortal realm and the netherworld were all shrouded in a layer of evil aura, and the reverse should not be any different. Thus, in the eyes of the beings of the netherworld, Yu Ying's charm should have decreased greatly. And as a king tier, how could Ao Ziun's self-control be weak? If one wanted to use beauty to tempt him, then even Yu Ying could not do it. It had to be Empress Luan Xing. That kind of charm did not distinguish between immortals and netherworld, and would kill all. Yu Ying drew her sword. The blade was like a bright moon, and set off her white robes, it was filled with an astonishing sense of beauty. Die! Ao Ziun was not tempted in the slightest. He brandished the dark destruction black dragon spear, bringing about a frightening cloud of black flames that instantly raised the temperature infinitely. Probably even level 4 godly metal would be melted very quickly. Ying shook her sword. Suddenly, a cold light flashed and the moonlight was cold. She should have cultivated a cultivation technique that leaned towards the ice element and just happened to counter Ao Ziyun. As the two of them battled, everyone watched without blinking. Even the other 8 great king tiers on the platform wore expressions of concentration. Though the Stone Emperor, the North Emperor, and Qi Huangji might be slightly superior in terms of battle prowess, there was a limit to their strength, and they did not dare to truly underestimate the other king tiers. After all, their cultivation levels had all been suppressed to the mountain river tier. There was a gap in everyone's battle prowess, but it would definitely not be too great. Ling Han was also watching with great interest. He had exchanged blows with Ao Ziyun before, and was quite certain of the latter's strength. However, the latter's dragon's might was completely useless against his heaven's might, and the dark destruction black dragon spear was also countered by the divine demon sword. In the end, he could only dejectedly leave. But Ying did not have these two great advantages. She only had the might of a king tier, and did not have the might of heaven and earth. Her divine sword was very strong, but now, it had also been suppressed to the level of level 4 and above, and not even level 5. Ao Ziyun laughed loudly, and shook his spear, channeling his dragon's might. A black true dragon appeared behind him, brandishing its claws and fangs furiously. Ying was instantly affected, and her battle prowess plummeted. A king tier of the immortal realm is nothing more than this, Ao Ziyun declared proudly. His spear swept out, and like a world-destroying black dragon, it was about to incinerate all life. Meanwhile, Ying released a battle cry. A streak of moonlight shot out from her mouth, and actually turned into a bright moon above her head. Clear and cold moonlight scattered down, blocking the dragon's might outside. Her battle prowess instantly returned to normal. Her divine sword shone, and endlessly clashed with Ao Ziyun's spear. Ling Han nodded. How could king tiers be defeated so easily? Which one of them did not have a few trump cards? Meanwhile, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden shook her head, and said, "Forget it, I am indeed inferior to those few people. Using a scheme to snatch a position, I feel uneasy." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Ling Han wrapped his arms around her slender waist, and whispered by her ear, "You are my wife. If I say you are qualified, then you are definitely qualified. Moreover, what we are snatching is a spot for the netherworld. That is winning glory for the immortal realm, so what need is there for me to feel uneasy?" The heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't help but laugh at his words, and said, "You speak as if you have already obtained these 2 spots. Ling Han broke into a grin and said, "Are you belittling your man?" Loquacious. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was embarrassed. Her beautiful eyes wandered, and she was incomparably beautiful. Ling Han felt an itch in his heart. Too bad, too bad. He had only recovered the bodily functions of a 5 or 6-year-old, and still did not possess the ability to push her down. "Pa," he slapped his thigh forcefully. "That was truly hateful. What are you doing?" The heavenly phoenix divine maiden did not know that his mind was filled with thoughts of pushing her down. Otherwise, she definitely would not have asked. Instead, she would have directly given him a slap. "There are mosquitoes," Ling Han said, gritting his teeth. "Cell phones read more refreshingly." Chapter 1308. The most emotional was actually the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. At the time, when their cultivation levels were the same, she could easily trample on Ling Han, and in the end, she forced Ling Han to step onto the path of searching for ancient sites to increase his own strength. But now, not only had Ling Han become a king-tier prodigy, he was even a king among kings. With such a husband, what more could she ask for? She showed a brilliant smile, and felt that she did not have to be so competitive in future. It was really good to have a strong arm to rely on. I admit defeat. Tuobadong was not someone who could not let go. As a king tier, he was more clear about the gap between himself and his opponent. Only by clarifying the gap could he continue to improve. Otherwise, even a king tier would slowly fall to become a top-notch prodigy, then become an ordinary prodigy, or even become mediocre. Ling Han couldn't help but smile and said, It seems like 10 moves. He had thrown out more than 10 punches. Tuoba Dong smiled bitterly. Though Ling Han had thrown out more than 10 punches, each punch was done casually and did not use his full power at all. In contrast, he had unleashed his full battle prowess and was only lacking a few powerful moves. Because he knew that it would be useless even if he did, and it would instead cause his battle prowess to plummet. In any case, he had only lost once and still had 2 chances to challenge, so there was no need for him to fight to the death with Ling Han. He leaped off the platform and went to adjust his breathing. Like Yu Yin, he was looking for a pushover to bully. Ling Han sat down cross-legged and waited for others to challenge him, though this was practically impossible. After the crowd below had rested for a while, they began a new round of challenges. This time, it was even more exaggerated. Over 100 prodigies all stepped onto the same platform, almost filling it to the brim. And the ones being challenged were respectively the Cloud Maiden and Ao Xiun. Those who could come here were at least 3-star geniuses, and with so many people coming together, it was really very terrifying. Unfortunately, the Cloud Maiden and Ao Xiun had both cultivated their pinnacle level to perfection and had at least a 4-star advantage in battle prowess. This was not something that could be made up for with over 100 people. Ordinarily, 10 people could make up for a 1-star gap in battle prowess, so how many 10,000 people would it take to make up for 4 stars? Furthermore, to make 10,000 people attack at the same time, they had to rely on formations, and this also had to be coordinated, which was even more difficult. However, the waves of attacks were all ineffective. King was a king after all. It wasn't something that could be leveled with numbers. After Tuoba Dong and Yu Ying had rested for a long time, they began to challenge each other. One chose Yang Lin, while the other chose Tangu. This was another 2 intense and wonderful battles. After fighting for a long time, the victor was finally determined. Yu Ying won, while Tuoba Dong was defeated by Yang Lin. Now, 7 out of the 9 great monarchs were from the immortal world. Taking advantage of the fact that Yu Ying and Yang Lin were both exhausted from fighting for a long time, the others formed groups to fight again. However, even an injured ferocious tiger was still a tiger, and it was not something that could be defeated by a group of dogs. The battles continued. Aside from Ling Han, Qi Huangji, and the other 2 kings among kings, the battles on the other 5 platforms were extremely intense. In order to secure a spot for themselves, they all unleashed their ultimate techniques, which was an eye-opener for the spectators. 2 days passed by very quickly, and Tangu became the first king tier to completely lose his qualifications. A few hours later, Yu Ying became the second. Ling Han cracked a smile at Ao Xiun. Fuck. Ao Xiun immediately cursed internally, but he had yet to finish his thought when he saw that Ling Han had already flown up and stood in front of him. At this moment, the shadow in Ao Xiun's heart was indescribably huge. He had waited until now with great difficulty, and was just about to succeed when he suddenly encountered a fiend like Ling Han. You're too fucking evil, deliberately losing to your own woman so that you could take up an extra spot. But it just so happened that Ling Han had such strength. But. His mind turned quickly, and he immediately leaped down from the platform. There was still more than 15 minutes until the end of the 3 days, and he had only failed once. Then he would immediately admit defeat, and after 15 minutes, he would be able to make a move against the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and reclaim his spot. What's the rush? Ling Han moved. He was sent flying back with a single slap. A muscle twitched in Ao Xiun's cheek. You're really too ruthless, aren't you? I have no choice but to fight you. He shouted, I admit defeat. For the sake of good fortune, he did not mind losing some face. What does that have to do with me? Ling Han shook his head and threw a punch at Ao Xiun. If I want to beat you, I'll beat you. Peng. Ao Xiun had no choice but to parry and had no chance to descend from the platform at all. He couldn't lose even if he wanted to. Everyone couldn't help but be amused. They felt that the 2-realm prodigy gathering this time had finally come up with something new. Chapter 1309. Ao Ziyun wanted to lose, and wanted to rush off the platform, but Ling Han kept on blocking him. His ability was much stronger, and was enough to stop the other. You can't play with me like this. Ao Ziyun was about to cry. What kind of grudge was this? I'll give up my position to you, alright? Oh, since you want to go down so much and I'm not an unreasonable person, I'll send you off. Ling Han suddenly kicked out, landing a kick on Ao Ziyun's butt. Peng, this guy instantly fell head first. Ao Ziyun was stunned at first, and only then did he realize that Ling Han was really willing to let him go. He couldn't help but be overjoyed, but an instant later, his expression changed drastically. The time limit of 3 days was only less than the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. In other words, before he could challenge again, the time limit of 3 days would be up. Ling Han, you and I will be irreconcilable, he roared angrily, truly hating to the extreme. My ears are very good, there's no need to shout so loudly. Ling Han waved his hand. Of course, he would not take the other's threat to heart. Ao Ziyun raised his spear horizontally, and wished that he could rush onto the platform again to battle with Ling Han for another 300 rounds. This time, he swore that he would use all his ultimate moves, even the forbidden ultimate move that would cut off his lifespan, on Ling Han. Otherwise, he would definitely not be able to swallow this insult. But a mysterious power imprisoned him, causing him to only be able to stand like that, unable to take a single step forward. Not long after, white light appeared on the 9 platforms at the same time, completely enveloping the platforms. This meant that the people outside could no longer ascend. The time limit of 3 days was up. Ah! Ao Ziyun roared furiously at the skies, but it was completely useless. Boom! On the platforms, wisps of aura hung down, all milky white, making one feel relaxed and happy. This is celestial chi, Small Tower suddenly said. What? Ling Han exclaimed in shock. Though it's not much in the celestial realm, in the immortal realm, you can make up for a portion of the missing regulations and greatly increase your battle prowess, Small Tower said. Ling Han's heart stirred. If he wanted to break into the immortal realm, he would need to grasp the power of creation and destruction at the same time. Regardless of whether it was the immortal realm or the netherworld, from this point of view, they were both incomplete, only possessing a portion of the laws. Now, this immortal chi was making up for the missing netherworld laws? If this was the case, then this immortal energy really wasn't precious at all in the immortal domain. However, for the creatures of the deity realm and netherworld, this was a supreme treasure, allowing them to perfect their natural laws, truly cultivate to perfection. When the two worlds collide or even merge, that is the perfect world. Countless thoughts flashed through Ling Han's mind. But right now, he put everything aside and began to absorb the immortal energy to perfect himself. With the Demon Master's essence, he could only possess the aura of the underworld, but it did not mean that he could grasp the rules of the underworld. Therefore, he took this opportunity to continuously perfect himself, advancing towards a perfect and flawless Tao. Small Tower did not say anything else to avoid disturbing Ling Han. All the pores on Ling Han's body opened up, absorbing this so-called immortal chi. With the completion of the regulations, his cultivation level actually had a considerable increase, rising from the peak stage of the consummate level to perfection. At this stage, if he did not break through to the pinnacle level, it was impossible for his cultivation level to increase any further. But as the regulations of the two realms were perfected, his battle prowess continued to rise. The use of regulations was a part of battle prowess in the first place, and as one's cultivation level increased, the importance of regulations would also become more and more important. For example, Ling Han's power could surpass 6 stars, but his battle prowess could only surpass 6 stars or so, and that was because the regulations that he had grasped had not yet caught up. Time was limited, and he could not possibly recultivate every cultivation level to perfection. He could only make the most of his time. There were only 3 days. Everyone was sitting cross-legged. Not everyone knew what immortal chi meant, but they obviously knew that it would be very beneficial to them, so they naturally absorbed it as much as possible. Time passed quickly, and Ling Han only felt that there was a slight change in his muscles, bones, and flesh. He could not say exactly what it was, But he understood that this was advancing towards a better direction. Even in the domain of rising from the ashes of the indestructible heaven scroll, Ling Han had a new understanding. He was confident that if he could continue to bathe in immortal qi, the time needed to comprehend rising from the ashes could be shortened by half. Unfortunately, this was too precious, and he only had a mere 3 days. His godly bones became more and more crystalline, clearly as if they were forged from gold, but if one looked closely, they were also translucent, as clear as crystal, flashing with flowing light, and densely covered with divine patterns. That was the materialization of the indestructible heaven scroll, but apart from Ling Han himself, no one understood what it actually represented. At the same time, he grasped the regulations of 2 realms, and even the indestructible heaven scroll became a level stronger. Wang, the light that enveloped the platform disappeared, and the time limit of 3 days was up. Ling Han still wanted to continue. 3 days' time was far from enough for him to recultivate all his cultivation levels to perfection. Unfortunately, he could not continue. If he wanted to obtain good fortune again, he could only fight his way out of the 9 kings and become a king among kings. At this moment, he was filled with motivation, and his conviction was extremely firm. The 9 people on the platform were all tossed into the forest, and the second round of battle began. Ling Han first found the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Although she was also a top-notch prodigy, she was considered to be a mediocre among the 9 great king tiers. If she was targeted by any one of them, it would be very troublesome. After the 2 of them met up, they headed towards the summit. It was very easy to become the last king among kings. There was still a platform at the summit, and after 3 days, the person standing on it would be the winner. "I won't participate in this and will wait for you here," the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said. She knew that if she continued to follow Ling Han, she would inevitably distract Ling Han. Ling Han thought for a moment, nodded, and said, "All right." The heavenly phoenix divine maiden pulled him back and gave him a light hug. "Be careful." She was filled with emotion. In her understanding, the relationship between the 2 of them should be that she was protecting Ling Han. Now, it was Ling Han who was taking care of her instead. This made her feel both unfamiliar and sweet. Meanwhile, Ling Han took this opportunity to wrap his arms around her slender waist and gave her a kiss. This instantly caused this fierce woman to panic. At first, she still wanted to resist, but she was soon kissed dizzily. Her slender body seemed to melt like spring water, and she collapsed into Ling Han's arms. She was as charming as water and extremely flirtatious. Ling Han's heart surged, but his tender body actually didn't have the slightest reaction, causing him to grit his teeth in anger. Rising from the ashes, he had to cultivate it in the shortest time possible. Ling Han strode forward, and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden watched him from behind, her eyes glazed over. The mountain river forest wasn't big, and it was only 3,000 meters tall. Even an ordinary person wouldn't need too much time to climb to the summit, what more an immortal. Very soon, Ling Han arrived at the summit. At this time, the other 7 people were already in place, but they didn't start fighting. "They're finally here." Qi Huangji's eyes lit up, and the red sun above his head suddenly expanded a size. Its might increased by 100-fold. He laughed loudly and said, "All of you, come at me together." Chapter 13:10. What a good story. The Stone Emperor and North Emperor were unmoved, and they only sneered. They were both kings among kings, and it was always them who called on others to attack together. How could they possibly join in? Trash, scram. Qi Huangji rebuked softly. He launched a punch, which actually transformed into 4 bursts of flames that shot toward Faceless, Yang Lin, the Cloud Maiden, and Tuobadong. Even his companions from the netherworld became his targets. Faceless and the others didn't dare to be careless with this punch. They either dodged or parried. In any case, they couldn't just stand there and do nothing. Qi Huangji laughed loudly, and after one punch, he launched another. A red sun shone, making him look like a sun god. Faceless and the others all roared, but Qi Huangji was too powerful, so they were forced to team up. This was very interesting. Among the 4 of them, 3 were beings from the immortal realm, and 1 was from the netherworld, yet they were teaming up to attack a netherworld elite. This was a very disharmonious scene. However, they had no choice but to team up. Qi Huangji was too powerful, and had already surpassed the level of ordinary king tiers. He had reached the level of a king among kings. If they were in the outside world, they could still rely on their cultivation level to win, but here, they could only rely on numbers when fighting at the same cultivation level. If they were in the outside world, Qi Huangji had already advanced into the heavenly body tier, and the only ones who could rival him were the Stone Emperor and North Emperor. Haha. Qi Huangji's black hair was disheveled, and images of stars circulated in his eyes. There was a red sun above his head, and when he launched a punch, even the 4 king tiers didn't dare to take it head-on. They could only dodge and take advantage of the opportunity to counterattack. It's useless, Qi Huangji said in disdain. In his eyes, only Ling Han, the North Emperor, and the Stone Emperor could be a match for him. The rest were mediocre, and they could only be swept away. How could Faceless and the others be willing to admit defeat? They all used their ultimate techniques, and engaged in a fierce battle with Qi Huangji. Clouds rise, a true dragon emerges from 1,000 peaks, the Cloud Maiden shouted. She was the first to unleash a powerful technique. She spread her hands, and green peaks appeared, surrounded by clouds. A dragon's roar could be heard from within the green mountains, as if a true dragon was hibernating there. A true dragon soared into the sky, and its might intimidated the world. A terrifying pressure instantly swept out in all directions. It was as if this woman was the ruler of the world, and everyone could only worship her. Mournful flowing water, death of 1,000 notes. Faceless strummed the strings of his zither, his voice as urgent as a war drum, causing everyone's heartbeats to accelerate involuntarily, as if they were about to explode. The sound waves transformed into flowing water. They seemed to be traceless, yet they were filled with killing intent as they flowed toward Qi Huangji. Yang Lin, on the other hand, took out an ancient-looking umbrella. However, half of the umbrella was already severely damaged, which ruined its beauty. But when he opened it, his entire person seemed to become the center of the universe, incomparably dazzling. "Eternal blue skies, I am eternal," he said. The ancient umbrella glowed, and transformed into an ancient Buddha. Golden light radiated for tens of thousands of meters, and it struck out a palm strike at Qi Huangji. This was an incomplete saint tool that he had obtained. In the outside world, it could suppress heavenly body tier elites. Tuoba Dong gritted his teeth, and smacked his chest heavily. He spat out a mouthful of golden blood. "Lion King roar, the world shall fall." He roared. Pa. Even the air was shattered as he charged towards Qi Huangji. The 4 kings had all unleashed their ultimate moves. This time, even Qi Huangji didn't dare to be careless. In a one-on-one battle, he could easily defeat any one of the 4, but when surrounded by 4 of them, his advantage was already very, very small. Now that he was being bombarded by their ultimate moves, the pressure on him was naturally even greater. With this one mistake, even he would have to bear a grudge. Not bad, not bad. This is now a bit interesting. Qi Huangji laughed loudly, his fighting spirit soaring. Under normal circumstances, it would be impossible for him to exchange blows with 4 king tiers, and this caused him to also become excited. But in front of me, this is far from enough. He shot out a punch, simple, violent, and direct. Boom, this was not an ordinary punch. Instead, it transformed into a boundless sea of flames. An azure dragon darted out from the Cloud Maiden's green mountain, and was the first to approach the sea of flames. However, in the process of charging, the dragon's body was gradually burned, and it only managed to reach 3 feet in front of Qi Huangji before disappearing. The faceless sound of flowing water was also burned by the fierce flames, and disappeared 2 feet away. Yang Lin was even stronger. After all, the ancient umbrella in his hand was a saint tool. The ancient Buddha broke through the sea of flames, and its palm struck in front of Qi Huangji. However, it just so happened to meet Qi Huangji's fist, and it instantly exploded. Tuoba Dong's Lion King roar tore through the air, and it stopped 3 feet behind Tuoba Dong, unable to advance any further. The 4 king tiers had joined forces, but they were all useless. Trash should just piss off. Qi Huangji added with a punch, which transformed into 4 flaming tigers that charged towards the faceless, to Obadong and the others. After using their ultimate moves, the 4 of them were in a weakened state, so how could they resist Qi Huangji's counterattack? They were instantly sent flying. Thankfully, they were also king tiers, so this attack only sent them flying and caused some minor injuries. It was unable to severely wound them. The clothing on the Cloud Maiden's right arm was completely scattered, revealing a snow-white arm that was as smooth as jade. It was extremely enchanting. Meanwhile, Yang Lin slid back 9 meters, his face pale. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Meanwhile, Tuoba Dong staggered back 17 steps, leaving a row of deep footprints on the ground. His golden hair danced wildly in the wind. Pa! The cloth covering Faceless' face was torn into pieces, revealing a featureless face. Gasp! When they saw Faceless' true face, even though they were all young king tiers, they all sucked in a sharp breath. What kind of person was this? His face was completely blank, with no facial features. In fact, he didn't even have hair or ears. There was only a head. If it weren't for the fact that his clothes had 2 sides, just his head alone would be impossible to distinguish which side was his face and which side was the back of his head. How did this guy speak? Faceless. He was truly faceless. Faceless sighed. He clearly didn't have a mouth, yet everyone could sense that he had indeed sighed. He drew his sword from his zither, shook it lightly and said, "Who would have thought that we would reach this stage so soon? What is it?" A look of interest appeared on Qi Huangji's face. Apart from martial art, there weren't many things in this world that could interest him. However, he had never heard of a race that didn't even have a face. Shua. Faceless slashed his sword, but he didn't slash at Qi Huangji. Instead, he stabbed his own face. Poof. Blood instantly sprayed into the air. Was he going to commit suicide or mutilate himself just because he was ugly? Faceless slashed his sword a few times, digging out a few bloody holes on his face. It was as if he was drawing on a piece of paper. Instantly, 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth appeared on his face. Of course, it was only a patch of blood. However, an astonishing thing happened. The bloody holes rapidly transformed, forming a pair of eyes. The nose also swelled up, and the mouth split open, revealing 2 rows of teeth. His hair was growing out at an astonishing speed, and so were his ears. In just a few breaths, a real person had appeared. This was an extremely handsome man. In fact, he could even be considered a super handsome man. He could practically make all men jealous. However, the 7 people present were stunned. This was because Faceless' aura was actually rising, surpassing the king tier. He was advancing toward the king among kings. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1312. They drew lots, Ling Han against the Stone Emperor, and Qi Huangji against the North Emperor. Without any nonsense, the 4 of them immediately started fighting. Human fist. The Stone Emperor punched out. His fist was even larger than a pot lid, and it looked as if it had been forged from jade. However, his fist was not weak. In reality, he had the bloodline of a rock spirit, and the toughness of his physique was his greatest trump card. Comparable to godly metal of the same level. Thus, the Stone Emperor's battle style was also close-quarters combat. He had once fought a king of the same level in a star field, and with just 10 punches, he had beaten his opponent into minced meat. If he hadn't been merciful, even his opponent's divine soul would have been obliterated. Ling Han laughed heartily and met it with a punch of his own. Bam! When the 2 fists collided, a terrifying light burst forth and easily tore the air apart, forming a black vortex. It was as if space itself had been torn apart. This was not impossible because the Mountain River tier was the highest level in this world, and they were all equivalent to Saint Kings. When Saint Kings moved, tearing apart space was not rare. A look of astonishment appeared on the Stone Emperor's face. Ling Han had exchanged a blow with him, yet not only had his bones not shattered, but even his skin had not been broken. He acknowledged Ling Han's strength, but when it came to close-quarters combat, that was his domain. For example, The North Emperor's strength was on par with his, but the North Emperor didn't dare to fight him at close range. Geniuses naturally knew their own strengths and weaknesses. Playing to their strengths and avoiding their weaknesses was the way of the king. He saw that Ling Han liked to use his fists, so he was looking forward to being in the same group as Ling Han when they drew lots. He wanted to experience Ling Han's boxing skills, but he didn't expect to find that Ling Han's fists were surprisingly hard. This is fun. The Stone Emperor was excited, and his fighting spirit began to burn. Previously, he had only been playing around, and only now did he get serious. Ling Han brushed his hands and said, "There are very few people who can fight with me without their bones breaking. You're not bad." That's exactly what I was going to say. The Stone Emperor charged forward again, punching out with his fists. "Human, don't ever be a coward. Fight me 10,000 times with your fists. Whoever's a coward is a little dog." His iron fists were invincible, and he had never fought to his heart's content before. Thus, he was afraid that Ling Han wouldn't fight to his heart's content, so he tried to provoke him. Ling Han couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Just how old was this Stone Emperor? He actually dared to say the word, puppy. He shook his head and said with a smile, "All right, but don't cry when you lose." "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" The Stone Emperor shouted. "As long as you're not afraid." When the two of them fought, they abandoned all tricks and just used their fists to attack each other. The corners of Faceless and the other's mouths twitched. They felt that these two people were beasts. How could a normal person have such a terrifying physique? There was a limit to one's strength. If you put 70% of your strength on offense, only 30% of your strength could be used for defense. However, judging from how ferociously Ling Han and the Stone Emperor were fighting, it was clear that they were using all of their power in their attacks. This meant that the physiques of these two people were freakishly strong, and they didn't need to use origin power to defend themselves. Among those at the same cultivation level, was there anyone who could wound them? The four of them glanced at each other, feeling that it was impossible for them to defeat the two of them just by relying on pure power. They had already exchanged over 1,000 punches, yet not a single one of them had broken their bones, nor had their skin torn open. They had to use the power of regulations such as fire and ice to melt and freeze their bodies, and then cause them to lose their toughness. Regulations were a part of battle prowess in the first place. If these two people were only using brute power to attack each other, then that would be a completely boorish way of fighting. Experts would probably disdain such a thing. However, these two supreme king tiers were enjoying themselves to the fullest. The Stone Emperor's face was practically blooming, and he felt extremely satisfied. There had never been anyone who could make him feel so satisfied. He couldn't help but have a favorable impression of Ling Han. Even though this person was a human, he could still be considered a friend. "Human, I'm going to increase my battle prowess," he said. It was clear that if they only fought with brute power, neither of them would be able to break through the barrier of the other's physique. "That's exactly what I was thinking," Ling Han said with a hearty laugh. "Bright jade technique," the Stone Emperor shouted. His fists had originally been as smooth as jade, but now, they had become completely transparent. Numerous divine patterns lit up, covering his fists. Meanwhile, the blue divine pattern on Ling Han's fists glowed. Zzz. Lightning coiled around his fists. This was no ordinary lightning, it was divine lightning. Fuck! The Stone Emperor was just about to unleash a punch, yet he forcefully stopped himself. Even he felt a trace of fear when facing the lightning of heavenly tribulation. "I'm not fighting anymore," Ling Han said with a smile. "Fight!" the Stone Emperor said stubbornly. He took a large step forward and punched out. Ling Han met it head-on. Their fists collided. This time, the force of impact was even more terrifying. This was because both of them had used the power of regulations. Not only did their strength collide, but there was also the impact of their techniques. Lightning spread from the Stone Emperor's fists to his arms. Pa. The clothes on his arms were instantly turned into dust. When the lightning spread from his shoulders to his body, the treasured robes he was wearing lit up, preventing the lightning from further invading his body. The two of them both retreated. They had both used secret techniques, so their battle prowess was naturally incomparable. The Stone Emperor raised his hand. His jade-like fist broke open, and a green liquid flowed out. A strange fragrance wafted through the air. This was his blood. However, because he was originally a rock spirit, most of his blood was a rock spirit. It was just that it wasn't as pure as his father's. Thus, his blood was actually a rare spiritual liquid, an astonishing tonic. He was stunned. Although he had been injured before, this was the first time he had been injured by someone who was at the same cultivation level as him. Fuck, this human's fist was actually even harder than his own. He looked at Ling Han. Ling Han's fist was still perfectly fine. Ling Han sniffed, and then stared at the Stone Emperor's hand. He said, don't waste it. Catch it with a bottle. The Stone Emperor was instantly angered and said, that's my blood. I know, so don't waste it. In any case, it's already flowed out, so why don't you give it to me? Ling Han smiled innocently. You bastard. The Stone Emperor was furious. A streak of light surged, and his fist immediately began to heal at an astonishing speed. He was a descendant of a rock spirit, so his sturdy body and astonishing recovery ability were his forte. Again, he swung his fist. He refused to believe that a mighty rock spirit like him would lose to a human. As you wish. However, if you lose, you'll have to give me a bottle of that spiritual liquid, Ling Han said with a smile. That's my blood, the Stone Emperor emphasized. I know. Why are you being so stingy? I'll just give you a little too, Ling Han said nonchalantly. Fine. If you can defeat me, I'll give you a bottle of spiritual liquid. The Stone Emperor was furious. He swung his fists repeatedly, and his treasured robe weaved from phoenix blood true gold threads also glowed. Not only could it increase his defenses, but it could also increase his power to a certain extent. After all, this was saintly material. Even though it had been weakened to the mountain river tier, it still possessed extremely powerful effects. Chapter 13:13. Remember what you said. Don't go back on your word later. Ling Han laughed. Beat me first, the Stone Emperor said in a low voice. He had activated various secret techniques on himself, and his battle prowess had risen to a whole new level. Ling Han did not think much of it and immediately activated his Heaven's Might. With a single strike, the Stone Emperor's battle prowess instantly decreased by 2 stars. This was too terrifying. What kind of concept was losing 2 stars of battle prowess? It was 100 times weaker. Their battle prowess was originally close, but one of them suddenly had his battle prowess reduced by 100 times. Was this still a battle of equal strength? Ling Han punched out, and the Stone Emperor was sent flying. Ping 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 ping. The Stone Emperor's body crashed through at least 100 or so trees before finally coming to a stop. His entire body was hanging from a tree. Shio. His body that was 9 meters tall immediately shrank, turning into a miniature person that was only 3 inches tall. He shook his head hard and finally woke up from the dizziness. He couldn't help but be astonished. His opponent actually had a secret technique that could affect his battle prowess. This was too shocking. Not 10% or 20%, but 2 stars. One had to know that even the difference between a peak king and a normal king was less than 1 star. In front of Ling Han, even peak-level kings did not have the qualifications to be called kings. How could they fight? So powerful, the Stone Emperor said gravely. Is that heaven's might? Otherwise, even the might of a true dragon wouldn't be able to affect our rock spirit lineage. His father was a rock spirit that attained Tao, a saint that was on par with the true dragon. Thus, since they were of the same rank, even a true dragon could not affect his battle prowess. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, That's right, it's the heavenly might stone. Brat, are you going to fight or not? If not, hand over the spiritual liquid obediently. Just the power of heaven's might isn't enough. The Stone Emperor shook his head and charged towards Ling Han. His body was enveloped by a dense layer of light. I'll activate my clan's secret technique, and I'll be impervious to all techniques for 2 hours. If I can't defeat you within that time, then I'll concede defeat. This time, he didn't enlarge his body. He was just a small person. However, when he punched out, the power was concentrated to a single point, and the destructive power was even more terrifying. Ling Han unleashed Heaven's might and blasted it toward the Stone Emperor. Sure enough, Heaven's might was no longer able to affect the Stone Emperor. Just as he had said, he was invulnerable to all techniques for 2 hours. Huh, you want to defeat me in 2 hours? Ling Han laughed. What a joke. He also swung his fist toward the Stone Emperor. Previously, the Stone Emperor's fist had been as large as a manhole cover, yet now, it was as small as a fingernail. Compared to Ling Han's fist, it was completely disproportionate. In fact, it couldn't even be considered an infant. But whoever was too small would definitely suffer greatly. He was the strongest when he was in his original form, and it was suitable for all living beings. At this size, the Stone Emperor's physique would undoubtedly be even more powerful. Moreover, his power would also be concentrated, and his destructive power would also be even greater. Bam! The two fists collided, and the power of the Stone Emperor's fist was concentrated at a single point before exploding forth, creating a terrifying shockwave. Carta sound rang out from within Ling Han's body. His shoulder had actually been dislocated. So powerful. Ling Han nodded and casually put his shoulder back into place. The impact of this punch was truly terrifying. Although it hadn't been able to break his godly bones, it had still affected him considerably. Meanwhile, the Stone Emperor's mouth gaped open in shock. In his original form, his punch had actually only been able to dislocate Ling Han's shoulder. Fuck, which one of them was the rock spirit? The Stone Emperor's expression was solemn, and he said, "Human, you are qualified to make me use the 3 metal-shattering fists." Is it very powerful? Ling Han asked with a smile. Among the 5 elements, metal is used for killing, while stone is used for defense. However, my father was unwilling to accept this, and so he created the 3 metal-shattering fists. He believed that the offensive power of the Rock Spirit tribe could similarly surpass that of the Metal Spirit tribe, the Stone Emperor said. He circulated the power of his fist. Although it was only 3 inches tall, the aura that radiated from it was incredibly shocking. Rumble. The ground around him sank layer by layer, as if there was a massive, invisible hand pressing down on it. He had only circulated the power of his fist for a moment. If he was struck by a full-on punch, how terrifying would the destructive power be? "Do you dare to accept?" the Stone Emperor asked, his voice filled with arrogance. This was a fist technique that had been created by a saint. If it weren't for the fact that he also possessed the bloodline of the Rock Spirit, there was no way that he could have used it. It was precisely because of this that the might of this fist technique was also world-shaking. Why wouldn't I dare? Ling Han was brimming with confidence. Among those at the same cultivation level, who would be able to break through his physique? Even if there were, they would at most be able to inflict some minor injuries, which he would be able to recover from after circulating the indestructible Heaven Scroll. "Human, after this battle, even if you lose, you will still be qualified to be my friend," the Stone Emperor said with a smile. He liked people who dared to clash head-on with him. "Fine." Ling Han nodded. He was quite fond of the Stone Emperor's straightforward personality. First punch. The Stone Emperor charged over, leaping high into the air. However, because he was too small, his leap was only enough to reach Ling Han's face. Then he launched a punch. Ling Han punched out. A terrifying power instantly erupted from the Stone Emperor's small body, sending Ling Han flying. Ling Han was sent flying for several dozen meters before landing on the ground. The web between his thumb and forefinger had split open, and blood was dripping from his wound. As expected of a technique created by a saint. How powerful! Ling Han smiled faintly. This punch had finally broken through his defenses. However, that was all it had done. It was unable to injure his godly bones. After all, the toughness of his godly bones had reached the level of level 5 godly metal. Who in the Mountain River tier could break through them? Even the power of the peak stage of the pinnacle level wouldn't be able to. If one used flames to burn them, they would still be able to melt them after spending a few days and nights. Second punch. The Stone Emperor roared. He punched out with his right fist again. Strangely enough, his body didn't change in the slightest. However, his fist suddenly enlarged by a few dozen times. Ling Han was sent flying again. However, he used the U symbol in midair this time. He glided beautifully and landed firmly on the ground. He shook his hand and said, "It's indeed a bit powerful. Even my hand is starting to hurt." The Stone Emperor roared, and he punched out again. This time, his fist transformed into a mountain, and it was as if it could even pierce through heaven and earth. With such a domineering aura, this fist smashed down heavily toward Ling Han. Even the battle between the North Emperor and Qi Huangji was affected, and Faceless and the others all hurtled back in retreat. This punch had even reached the peak stage of the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. This was extremely inconceivable. One had to realize that even if one cultivated to the peak stage of the pinnacle level of the Mountain River tier, they would only be able to rival the early stage of the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. However, the Stone Emperor's battle prowess had increased by 3 stars on top of this foundation. This was an extremely dazzling strike. Even the Stone Emperor could only unleash this strike once by relying on the connection of their bloodline. Boom! This punch seemed to pierce through the heavens, and it descended with a boundless might. Chapter 13-14. Boom! The earth trembled uncontrollably, and at least a third of the forest was destroyed. The ground rippled like a carpet that had been lifted up, and it finally stopped after a dozen or so breaths. It was too terrifying. The might of a single punch could be so powerful. One had to realize that this was an area formed by the collision of the regulations of the two realms, so it should be indestructible. The Stone Emperor retracted his fist. But his mountainous fist shrank back to its normal size, and a proud expression appeared on his face. This punch could even defeat most cultivators at the peak stage of the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, let alone those at the pinnacle level of the Mountain River tier. After he retracted his fist, the scene below was revealed. Ling Han was still standing. Gasp. Not only was the Stone Emperor in disbelief, but the others were also in a similar state. Under such a powerful attack, Ling Han was still completely unscathed? In reality, destroying level 5 godly metal with brute force would definitely require power above the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. If it was the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, then it would require the power of regulations, such as burning flames or corroding poisons. Ling Han had cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll, so his defense and recovery abilities were far above his battle prowess. If there were 2 Ling Han in this world, then it would definitely be a situation where one couldn't kill the other, and the other couldn't kill the other. Ling Han stretched his body. His clothes had been completely destroyed, but he had already taken out new ones to change into. He smiled and said, "That was a good punch. It almost broke my bones." If the Stone Emperor's punch could be a little stronger, and reach the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, then it would indeed be possible. Even someone as proud as the Stone Emperor was dumbfounded. He couldn't help but admit defeat, and said, "I'm no match for you at the same cultivation level." In terms of defense, Ling Han had even surpassed him, a rock spirit. In terms of offense, Ling Han possessed Heaven's Might, which could reduce his opponent's battle prowess by 2 stars. In a battle of the same cultivation level, even Supreme King tiers would only be able to hold a grudge. He was so terrifying on both offense and defense, so how was one supposed to fight him? If one wanted to defeat Ling Han, they had to have an advantage in cultivation level. "You really are a freak," the Stone Emperor said slowly. This kind of evaluation should have been used by others on him, but now it came out of his mouth. It could be seen that he was really shocked. Ling Han laughed and said, "Since you lost the bet, hand over the spiritual liquid." The Stone Emperor was a little depressed, but he didn't go back on his word. He made a small cut on his arm, and squeezed out a small vial of spiritual liquid. He was an elite of the heavenly body tier, and he was also a rock spirit. His blood could be considered a precious treasure even among heavenly body tier elites. He tossed the jade vial to Ling Han, and Ling Han naturally did not stand on ceremony, storing it into the Black Tower. On the other side, Qi Huangji and the North Emperor were still locked in a fierce battle, both of them unleashing their ultimate techniques. The North Emperor used a saber, and when he slashed out with his golden saber, it seemed as if he could even slice apart the heavens and earth. Meanwhile, Qi Huangji drew out an ancient mirror, which continuously spewed out flames that burned everything in its path. Their battle prowess was about the same, and now they were competing with their divine artifacts. Theoretically speaking, the North Emperor was the disciple of a saint. Although his treasured saber was not saintly material, it was level 15 godly metal, a material that even eternal river tears would drool over. The weapon forged from it was naturally powerful. However, Qi Huangji's ancient mirror was more like a saint tool, and its might was boundless. Now that both god tools had been reduced to the mountain river tier, the saint tool was naturally superior, though this advantage was very small. With this advantage, Qi Huangji finally gained the upper hand, and the more he accumulated, the more obvious it became. The North Emperor was obviously not a sore loser. He quickly retreated 30 meters, shook his head and said, "I've lost." Although he had only lost in terms of god tools, a loss was a loss and there was no excuse for it. Qi Huangji became serious for once and said, "You are very powerful. However, if we battle without using our cultivation levels, I will win even more easily." Without using our cultivation levels, the gap between Saint tools and level 15 God tools would naturally be even greater. Ling Han couldn't help but be surprised. Yang Lin was not the only lucky person here. Qi Huangji actually also had a Saint tool. Next, Qi Huangji looked at Ling Han, a sinister expression on his face, and said, "If I defeat you, I will become a true king." Ling Han laughed and said, "Aren't you a frog at the bottom of a well? Putting aside who wins and who loses, we have only arrived at a corner of the vast universe. Heaven knows if there are stronger people in other places." Especially when he knew that there was a celestial realm, and Hunyeo had only spent about 5 years to reach the Genesis tier. Calling her a prodigy was really laughable. "Come." Qi Huangji took a step forward and said, "3 lives extinguished, 7 strikes to the divine sense." Wang, a frightening cold light shot out from his eyes, transforming into a divine sword that slashed at Ling Han. Ling Han was slightly surprised. This was actually a divine sense attack technique. He had seen many people who had cultivated their divine sense, and his 7-kill subduing soul technique could not do much. However, there were pitifully few people who had cultivated divine sense attacks, which was why he was so surprised at first glance. This sword slashed. Ling Han stood solemnly and did not parry, allowing this sword to slash into the top of his head. Qi Huangji couldn't help but smirk coldly. He had spent a great deal of effort on the cultivation of his divine sense, so not only was his divine sense sturdy, but it was also extremely powerful when transformed into an attack. This person actually dared to be so careless. He was really asking for trouble. He had not thought that he would win this battle so easily. "So that's it." Ling Han broke into a smile. He had cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll, and his divine sense was also a level above his cultivation level. It was incredibly difficult to severely wound his divine sense. Qi Huangji finally revealed a serious expression. Being able to disperse his divine sense attack was not something inconceivable, but Ling Han had taken it head-on, and was completely unscathed. This was frightening. This person's divine sense was even stronger than his. "Not bad, this is the battle I am looking forward to." Qi Huangji laughed loudly, all his caution transforming into soaring fighting spirit. He formed seals with his hands and said, "Take my 8 words true technique first. Birth, old age, sickness and death, all kinds of ailments." 1. Several streaks of black light flew out from his mouth, forming 8 dark characters that crashed towards Ling Han. Ling Han instantly felt a terrifying killing intent assaulting him, and a shiver ran through his entire body. This was a terrifying secret art. Even he felt pressured by it. He discovered that his vitality had been greatly weakened, and his essence, energy, and spirit had all fallen to rock bottom. Could this be a curse? Ling Han had obtained a vial of curses before, and as long as he collected the blood, hair, and other things of the other party, he could curse them to death. Even if they had a tough life and did not die from the curse, they would still fall gravely ill, and their origin power would be greatly damaged. That vial had belonged to a group of people who cultivated netherworld cultivation techniques, so deducing from this, the curse technique should be a netherworld cultivation technique. He gave a soft shout, activating the might of lightning. Instantly, crackling sounds of lightning rang out, and his whole body was wrapped in blazing white lightning, completely dispelling the power of the curse. The power of heavenly tribulation could wash away and purify everything. Interesting, Qi Huangji said with a grin. Chapter 1316. Everyone had personally witnessed just how powerful the North Emperor was. He had battled with Qi Huangji to the point of insanity, and in the end, it was only because the quality of his god tool was slightly inferior that he was defeated. In terms of battle prowess alone, the North Emperor was definitely no weaker than Qi Huangji. But this King of Kings actually admitted that he had been defeated by another person within 100 moves. Just what kind of monster was the other party? He was way too strong. Heh, that's because you're ignorant. The Stone Emperor sneered and said, "You people are stuck in this world, and think that you can be called a king just because you're invincible among your peers on a planet. How do you know how big the entire world is?" The Cloud Maiden and the others all revealed awkward expressions. If these words were spoken by someone else, they would naturally be disdainful and think that they were merely jealous. However, it was spoken by a king tier, and it was even a king tier among kings, so it carried a lot of weight. However, the Stone Emperor's words had been too direct, and they had all been beaten black and blue. The North Emperor smiled warmly and said, "Some people are constantly traveling between the two realms, comprehending the laws of the two realms at the same time, fusing them into one. Therefore, in a battle of the same level, they are naturally stronger." What? The Cloud Maiden, Yang Lin, and Tuoba Dong all turned pale with fright. Even Faceless looked shocked. The Stone Emperor sneered again, and said, "What do you think the benefits you obtained from before were? That's because of the regulations of the netherworld. Otherwise, how could your battle prowess have increased so much when your cultivation level, secret techniques, and bloodlines hadn't changed?" The Cloud Maiden and the others were shocked once again. They hadn't expected there to be such a saying. They were limited by their cultivation level, and the strongest elite behind them was only at the Eternal River tier. In terms of understanding of martial art, how could they possibly compare to the Stone Emperor and North Emperor, who had saint-level backgrounds? However, whether it's the netherworld going to the God Realm or the God Realm going to the netherworld, it's too dangerous. The North Emperor shook his head. Even he didn't dare to rashly step foot into the netherworld. Once his identity was exposed, he would surely suffer the pursuit of the experts of the netherworld. The Cloud Maiden found it strange and said, "Since comprehending the laws of two realms can make one stronger, why don't the two realms take a step back and allow both sides the opportunity to comprehend it? With the current opposition between the two realms, how can we possibly allow the other party's martial artists to come to our territory to comprehend the rules?" The North Emperor sighed. Rome wasn't built in a single day. The two realms are born to oppose each other, just like water and fire. How can they possibly live in harmony? The Cloud Maiden and the others did not say anything else. They only had to ask themselves, if this wasn't the two realm prodigies gathering, would they have killed a being from the netherworld realm? The answer was undoubtedly yes. Killing one more creature from the netherworld would increase the safety of the immortal realm. This was especially true for geniuses. Killing one of them was even more meaningful. If that's what they all thought, then what about everyone else? The conflict between the two realms stemmed from the source. Moreover, it was unknown how many years of grievances had accumulated. How could it be resolved? How could it be possible for them to get along with Ho? But why is it that even though we're in opposing worlds, comprehending the netherworld's laws can increase our strength? The Cloud Maiden asked. She was a woman, and she was also a beauty. She naturally had an advantage in interpersonal relationships, so it was convenient for her to ask these questions. The North Emperor and Stone Emperor exchanged a look, and both shook their heads. Even saints could not answer this question. If Ling Han heard their conversation, He would be able to tell them with great certainty that only by comprehending the regulations of both realms would he be able to open the doors to the celestial realm and obtain true eternal life. Ling Han used his body as a bow, and his origin power as an arrow. Z, the lightning mark on his right hand lit up, and infused itself onto the arrow. Pa, blazing white lightning danced on the arrow of origin power, exuding the power of heaven's might. Qi Huangji instantly looked astonished. This arrow had not even been shot, yet he could already feel a terrifying pressure. Once it was shot, it would definitely be earth-shattering. Xiao, Ling Han loosened his grip, and the arrow of origin power shot out. It was as fast as a streak of light. The annihilating Dragon Star arrow was extraordinarily fast in the first place, and now that it had fused with the lightning of heavenly tribulation, its speed was naturally raised to a whole new level. He had only loosened his grip, and in the next instant, it had already arrived at Qi Huangji's chest. Qi Huangji paled in shock. He knew that this arrow from Ling Han would definitely be incredibly terrifying, but he had completely not imagined that it would be so fast. In his eyes, the arrow of origin power was intertwined with lightning, endlessly enlarging, and incredibly blinding. Freeze! He shouted loudly. His face was distorted, but an ancient aura burst forth from his body. It was incomparably mysterious. The world suddenly slowed down. At first, that arrow that had been like a streak of light was as slow as an ant crawling, yet Qi Huangji was completely unaffected. He tilted his body, avoiding the tip of the arrow. But it was at this instant that the world returned to normal. Xiao, the arrow of origin power shot past, bringing with it intertwining lightning as it disappeared into the dense forest in the distance. Qi Huangji was both furious and shocked. He had a great secret, and that was that his bloodline was incredibly powerful. In fact, it could even control time, causing the time of a certain area around him to stop, but it could only last for an instant. However, being able to control time was undoubtedly the most terrifying ability in the world. As long as he had the chance to get close, he could even slaughter eternal river tears with his heavenly body tear cultivation. However, this kind of ability could not be used casually, and could only be used once every 3 days. Because it required the power of his bloodline, once that mysterious power in his bloodline was exhausted, he could only slowly recover. Such a powerful ability, and he actually used it so quickly. Qi Huangji was naturally furious. He stared at Ling Han, yet dared not be careless even more, fearing that Ling Han would shoot another arrow. He could not use this kind of ability again. He gave a soft shout and charged at Ling Han. He closed the distance, but not to the point where their fists would collide. There was about 3 meters between them. This way, he could not only make Ling Han unable to use his expertise in archery, but also maximize his battle prowess. Ling Han, however, was unafraid. He was only curious why the annihilating Dragon Star arrow seemed to pause for an instant when it reached Qi Huangji. Though that was only an insignificant instant, it was precisely this pause that allowed Qi Huangji to take the opportunity to dodge to the side. Stagnation time. Ling Han's heart clenched. If that was really the case, then this kind of technique was too powerful. However, if Qi Huangji really grasped this kind of technique, then wouldn't he be absolutely invincible? Then how could he possibly be so evenly matched with the North Emperor, and ultimately still rely on a Saint tool to win? This kind of technique definitely could not be used all the time, so it would only be used at the most crucial moment. More importantly, how many times could it be used? Ling Han was not too worried. Even if his time had been frozen by Qi Huangji, with the strength of his physique, it was completely unrealistic for Qi Huangji to kill him in that instant. He spread his large hands and pressed towards the other party. The 2 Supreme King tiers engaged in a battle. This was the final battle, and the victor could enjoy the blessing alone. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 1317. At the start, Ling Han and Qi Huangji were both wary of each other, fearing that the other was hiding some terrifying killing move. They were both very careful in their battle, not daring to go all out. However, as they fought, their tempers and pride were revealed. Fist shatters limitless. Qi Huangji roared, and punched out with his fists. They separated like the horns of a goat, crashing towards Ling Han. Boom! The pressure was like a mountain. Ling Han humphed and no longer held back. He channeled heaven's might and suppressed Qi Huangji. Haha, this move is useless against me, Qi Huangji said with a loud laugh. His eyes flickered, and there was a flame burning in his body, burning away the heaven's might. This was a black flame, and a single glance caused a chill to run down Ling Han's spine. Essence divine flames, the Stone Emperor and the North Emperor exclaimed at the same time. Both of them looked shocked. What are essence divine flames? The Cloud Maiden asked. If she didn't understand, she could ask. In any case, women had an advantage, and they didn't need to worry about face. The Stone Emperor's expression was solemn, and he said, "In this world, there are 99 kinds of divine flames. According to legends, they have existed since the beginning of the world. They exist in the immortal realm, and also in the netherworld." The North Emperor nodded and continued, "Essence divine flames can't fuse with living beings, but there are also exceptions. Those who obtain essence divine flames can become saints without exception, and in this world, there are 99 kinds of divine flames, and they can never be extinguished. Even if they fuse with living beings, they will return to the world after the living beings die. Essence divine flames are the true precious treasures of this world. Residing in one's body, they can help cultivators comprehend the great Tao of fire of heaven and earth. When used, they can even burn saints to ashes," the Stone Emperor continued. Of course, limited by cultivation level, Qi Huangji can't be so strong now, but it's enough to raise his battle prowess by 1 or 2 stars, the North Emperor said solemnly. The Cloud Maiden and the others all paled. Raising their battle prowess by 1 or 2 stars on top of their foundation was too terrifying. Could this guy be a darling of heaven and earth? The Stone Emperor grimaced. Although he was the son of a saint, he didn't have Qi Huangji's wealth. Everyone walked towards Yang Lin. He was also a favored child of heaven and earth, and he had obtained the recognition of a holy artifact as its master. Yang Lin shook his head and smiled bitterly. Compared to him, I'm simply a beggar. Both of them had obtained sage artifacts, but the other's was complete while his was incomplete. Speaking of other treasures, he had only picked up some alchemical pills, but Qi Huangji was actually a source divine flame of heaven and earth, which was equivalent to permanently storing a portion of the fire element Tao of heaven and earth in his body. Who could compare to such comprehension effects? No wonder Qi Huangji had advanced into the heavenly body tier at a mere 200 years old. With the help of essence divine flames, comprehension of cultivation level was a piece of cake. He only needed to increase his accumulation of origin power. A favored child of heaven and earth like him might be able to pick up some ancient divine medicine just by walking into the mountains and rivers. After eating one, his cultivation would soar. How could such a lucky man be defeated? Everyone still did not know that Qi Huangji's bloodline was similarly frightening and could even affect time. Otherwise, they would be even more astonished. How could the luck of heaven and earth favor one person so much? No matter how strong you are still not enough in front of me, because I am destined to be a king, Qi Huangji declared proudly. In his eyes, this heaven's might should be Ling Han's strongest trump card. It could weaken the other's battle prowess by 2 stars. It was too nature-defying. Unfortunately, he himself represented the Tao of heaven and earth, so how could he possibly be weakened? So much nonsense. Ling Han did not object to arrogant people. Prodigies were naturally arrogant, but to still spout so much nonsense was too annoying. He flicked his fingers. Shio shio shio. Multiple flashes of sword chi flew out. The lightning sword technique had been fused with the true might of heavenly tribulation. Qi Huangji laughed loudly. As he threw out punches, he shouted, "Obediently submit before me. I am an undefeatable king, and one day, I will rule over both the immortal realm and the netherworld. You are all frogs at the bottom of a well, completely unaware of how short-sighted your own vision is. You all do not even have the right to imagine my ambitions." Ling Han scoffed and said, "Celestial realm?" Pooh. Qi Huangji instantly spluttered. This was a great secret that he had always hidden in his heart. It was precisely because he knew of the existence of the celestial realm that he was incredibly arrogant. Not only did he not take the king tiers of the immortal realm seriously, but the netherworld was also the same. Because he firmly believed that he should belong to the celestial realm, high and mighty, and could look down on all living beings. The netherworld and the immortal realm were only his stepping stones for him to grow, and when he became a saint, he would break through the ancient road and enter into the celestial realm. This was his great secret, hidden in the deepest part of his heart. He had never shared it with anyone, because no one was worthy of it. But now, what he thought was his greatest secret was casually and carelessly spoken by someone else, as if it was not some earth-shattering secret at all, but something that everyone knew. In this instant, it was as if he had fallen from the clouds, filled with disappointment and confusion. How could you possibly know? His expression was filled with confusion. Ling Han did not answer, and instead speculated, "Previously, you could affect my arrow, and this should be the power of your bloodline. And I guessed it. You should also be an ancient divine tribe." Qi Huangji instantly showed a sinister expression, and the veins on his forehead instantly bulged, his killing intent surging. He was the only one left in his bloodline, and in his bloodline, there was such a rule. He could not let anyone know of his true identity, and those who knew of his secret had to be killed. "You're courting death," he roared. The divine flames in his body surged, and suddenly surged out, dancing around his body. It was astonishingly frightening. These were divine flames that would incinerate even saints with a single touch. He charged at Ling Han, actually taking the initiative to engage in close combat with Ling Han. Ling Han was naturally unafraid, and began to exchange blows with him. Qi Huangji was indeed very strong, but his physique was clearly inferior to that of Ling Han and the Stone Emperor, so he was at too much of a disadvantage in a clash like this. Because his origin power was limited, if he focused on offense, his defense would definitely be problematic, but if he focused on defense, his offense would be weak, so what was the point of charging at him? They had only exchanged a few blows, and blood was already blooming on his fists. But right at this moment, Qi Huangji suddenly opened his mouth, and spat out a mouthful of black flames, which directly attacked Ling Han's face. With such a close distance, how could Ling Han dodge? Pooh, the mouthful of divine flames instantly completely sprayed onto Ling Han's face. As the fierce flames rose, Ling Han's figure could no longer be seen. These were divine flames of heaven and earth, and they blocked vision and divine sense. It was over. These were divine flames that could incinerate even saints. Even if they were suppressed here, it was definitely a piece of cake for them to incinerate a being of the same cultivation level. Even the Stone Emperor thought that even if Ling Han did not die, he would definitely be severely wounded. These were divine flames of heaven and earth, and they appeared along with the creation of the heaven and earth. In fact, they were even more noble than their rock spirit lineage. Chapter 13:18. A strange scene appeared. Black-colored divine flames actually surged out of Qi Huangji's body continuously as if something was pulling them. In that instant, the essence divine flames completely broke away from Qi Huangji's body and wrapped around Ling Han's body. "No!" Qi Huangji couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment. This wasn't something that he had intentionally unleashed. He wanted to use even more and stronger divine flames to incinerate Ling Han. Rather, his divine flames had been forcefully pulled out by a mysterious power. But how was this possible? Source divine flames. This was a power that belonged to heaven and earth, and was the most ancient and strongest existence. Aside from other source divine treasures, what else could rival it? Even if Ling Han also had source divine treasures, they could only rival it. Why could he forcibly pull his divine flames out of his body? This was practically a crushing advantage. Qi Huangji really panicked because he didn't understand. Logically speaking, whether in the immortal realm or the netherworld, essence divine flames were the most powerful things. Could it be that Ling Han had a treasure that surpassed these two realms? In reality, that was indeed the case. Being attacked by essence divine flames, Ling Han didn't care much. After all, divine flames would be suppressed to the mountain river tier here, and he had been burned by immortal flames before, so this was naturally nothing to worry about. But Small Tower suddenly transmitted a message to him, telling him not to retaliate because it wanted to pull out this divine flame. Ling Han naturally cooperated. If it was pulled into the Black Tower, it wouldn't be his anymore. Thus, he stood still and allowed Qi Huangji to add divine flames to his body. Sure enough, the Black Tower activated and forcibly pulled out the entire divine flame from Qi Huangji's body. Not bad, it is indeed essence power that can help me recover 1/10,000th, Small Tower said with slight delight. Fuck? Ling Han immediately said, Hey, you mean you want to keep it for yourself? I pulled it out in the first place, so of course it belongs to me. Small Tower didn't feel the slightest bit embarrassed. Moreover, only when I completely recover can I deceive heaven and earth so that you won't expose the secret of the Black Tower when you enter into the celestial realm in future. You're robbing me. Ling Han's heart ached. Primordial divine flame? Just from the sound of it, he knew it was something good. Stop grumbling and quickly cooperate with me, Small Tower said. Though it could destroy heaven and earth by controlling the Black Tower, that would draw the attention of the celestial realm. Thus, it needed Ling Han's cooperation. I can cooperate, but you must give me some benefits. Ling Han bargained. This Sundra pagoda was also an unscrupulous pagoda. He had to fight for it. All right. Small Tower hesitated for a moment before reluctantly agreeing. The man and the pagoda worked together to collect this origin divine flame. The Black Tower was completely capable of accomplishing this on its own, but in order to do so without leaking its aura, it would require Ling Han's cooperation. That was because this place suppressed the cultivation level of all beings, and Ling Han had walked out from the immortal flame. Boom! Ling Han's hands stretched out from the black flames, forming a series of hand seals. He opened his mouth wide, and this divine flame was instantly swallowed into his mouth. Return it to me. Qi Huangji's eyes were bloodshot, and he hurriedly rushed over to snatch it back. This was one of his most important trump cards, so how could he allow Ling Han to take it away? In his desperation, he did not think about how Ling Han could take away the origin divine flame. Meanwhile, the Stone Emperor and the others were all petrified, dumbstruck. Was that really the origin divine flame? Wasn't it said that even saints would be incinerated with a single touch? Why was it being sucked in by the two of them? As Ling Han exchanged blows with Qi Huangji, he used the technique that Small Tower had taught him to continuously collect the divine flame. The pitiful origin divine flame still wanted to struggle free, but it was completely unable to match the control of the Black Tower. It futilely transformed into various forms, yet could only be swallowed by Ling Han bit by bit. It looked like it had entered into Ling Han's mouth, but in reality, it was immediately taken away by the Black Tower. After all, the origin divine flame was filled with hostility towards him, so it was completely impossible for it to fuse with him. Even if it wanted to incinerate him, it would definitely not be a good thing if it really entered his body. Being able to endure the might of the divine flame and being burned by the divine flame inside one's body were two completely different things. Seeing the divine flame slowly decrease, Qi Huangji was anxious, angry, and panicked. He exploded with even more powerful battle prowess, wanting to stop Ling Han from devouring his own divine flame. You're seeking death. You're seeking death. Qi Huangji roared. Ever since he was born, he had never lost his composure like he did at this moment. But it couldn't be helped. This was one of his most important trump cards. Sorry, it entered my pocket, so it's mine now, Ling Han said with a smile. With the operation of Small Tower, the Black Tower's devouring speed became faster and faster. It took so long not because the Black Tower was not powerful enough. On the contrary, Small Tower was trying its best to control the Black Tower's devouring speed so that it would not use too much power and leak the aura of the Black Tower. Bastard! Qi Huangji finally summoned his Saint Tool. An ancient mirror appeared, and boom, a fire dragon appeared in the mirror, roaring as it charged at Ling Han. When he saw this Saint Tool, the North Emperor's expression involuntarily darkened. Though he was open-minded, this god tool that had defeated him still caused a slight ripple in his heart. After all, it was not Qi Huangji who had defeated him, but rather this saint tool. Wang, the divine demon sword appeared in Ling Han's hand, and he slashed at that fire dragon. Over 100 sword images swept past, and that fire dragon was instantly shattered into pieces, no longer possessing the slightest bit of might. The North Emperor and the others all looked stunned, and all turned their eyes to the divine demon sword in Ling Han's hand. The might of a saint tool was obvious to all, yet the might of Ling Han's sword seemed to be even stronger than that of a saint tool. Gasp! At the same cultivation level, saint tools would definitely be stronger than other god tools, but Ling Han's sword was even stronger, which meant that it was also a saint tool, and its level was even higher. After all, saints were divided into 4 cultivation levels, so saint tools were naturally also divided into 4 levels. Was he seeing a ghost? Normally, saint tools would not appear at all, but now, they appeared one after another, as if they were as ordinary as level 4 or level 5 god tools. The Black Tower swallowed the last wisp of divine flame, and Ling Han also closed his mouth, showing an expression of satisfaction. He looked at Qi Huangji, his eyes filled with admiration. He liked this kind of person with nature-defying luck. What was yours was mine, and it could save him a lot of effort. Yet Qi Huangji was seething with anger, and he said, "Return my divine flame to me." "Don't be so stingy, everyone." Ling Han had just said this, yet his expression immediately changed, because Small Tower had already refined that essence divine flame, and it had indeed given him a portion as per their agreement. However, this portion was not even a billionth of it. "You can't cheat me like this." "Fuck, this bitch Tower, even he was a scammer." "Small Tower." Ling Han roared through his divine sense. "What are you shouting for? I'm not deaf," Small Tower humphed. "You only gave me this little bit?" Ling Han said angrily. He was the one who had risked his life, but he actually didn't get any benefits. This was too much. Chapter 1320. A good story. In terms of battle prowess alone, this battle was definitely worthy of being the final battle. Qi Huangji's current power had soared to the late stage of the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. This was too terrifying, breaking the limit of 10 stars. However, in terms of the outcome, this was a complete joke. Such a terrifying attack landed on Ling Han's body, yet only scratched his skin. His godly bones were undamaged, as if he were an indestructible god of war. Though Ling Han attacked, he didn't kill because he felt that Qi Huangji was favored by the heavens and would definitely obtain many precious treasures in the future. It was better to leave him for future harvest. It would be a pity to kill him. If Qi Huangji knew his current thoughts, he would definitely vomit blood in anger. But now, the lifespan that he had severed was almost used up, and his power continued to drop, from more than 2 stars to 1 star, and then slowly falling back to normal. Their battle prowess was even, so how could that Qi Huangji be a match for Ling Han? He was suppressed in all aspects, and he couldn't do anything to Ling Han's defense and recovery. In terms of god tools, Ling Han's divine demon sword was a future celestial tool. Qi Huangji vomited 3 mouthfuls of blood, retreated 100 steps, and didn't attack again. His eyes were sinister as he stared fixedly at Ling Han. In this place, he really couldn't do anything to Ling Han, but it didn't matter. They wouldn't stay here forever. As long as he left, he could recover to the low extreme of the heavenly body tier, and Ling Han was only at the Sun-Moon tier, not a match for him. At that time, he would personally kill Ling Han and snatch back his essence divine flames. Ling Han smiled faintly. Putting aside whether the other could do anything to him, even if he could, the essence divine flames had already been refined by that rascal Small Tower, and now not even ashes were left, so how could he snatch them back? "I admit defeat," he said with a smile. Qi Huangji's chest rose and fell intensely, and he wanted nothing more than to cut Ling Han into pieces. However, he was a king tier, after all, so he still controlled the anger in his body. He merely flicked his sleeves and walked to the side. He had always been the one to say such words to others, and now hearing Ling Han say it, It made his heart feel as if it had been cut by a knife, making him feel terrible. The final King of Kings had finally been born. Ling Han, who could have imagined that such a young king tier wasn't Qi Huangji, the Stone Emperor, the North Emperor, or Yang Lin, the Cloud Maiden, or Yuing. Instead, it was an unknown figure. Only those who had heard of Ling Han's name in the two-realm battlefield would wave their hands excitedly and say, "I knew it." Because the 3 days were not up yet, even though the victor had been decided, the blessing of heaven and earth did not immediately bestow upon him. "Brother Ling, congratulations." The Stone Emperor, the North Emperor, Faceless, and the others all came over to offer their congratulations. Even Yang Lin and the Moon Maiden were no exception. The Moon Maiden's beautiful eyes were shining brightly, and there was a different kind of emotion in them. Beauties love heroes. Ling Han smiled as he exchanged blows with everyone. At this moment, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden finally walked up from the foot of the mountain. She had seen everything clearly from below, and was similarly filled with pleasant surprise. Who would have thought that the guy that she had casually bullied in the past would actually grow to such a powerful level? "This is my wife," Ling Han said with a smile. He introduced the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden to everyone. Of course, he introduced the 5 people from the immortal realm. The 2 people from the netherworld stood far away as if he were a god of plague. The Stone Emperor and the others all smiled and greeted the Moon Shadow Divine Maiden, their attitudes very cordial. Ling Han had already left an extremely deep impression in their hearts, so they naturally didn't mind being more cordial to the people around him, even though the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't even be considered a king tier. At first, the Cloud Maiden was only slightly curious about Ling Han. How could a person cultivate to such a freakish level? However, when she saw how close Ling Han was to the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and it seemed as if he had not noticed her exquisite beauty at all, she became indignant. In terms of appearance, she was on par with the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, but in terms of cultivation level, natural talent, and status, she was definitely several planets above the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. So, why was there only one heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden in Ling Han's eyes? She became competitive and deliberately pestered Ling Han to talk. Once the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden spoke, the Cloud Maiden would definitely target her. She wanted to compare her with the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden to see who was more outstanding. However, Ling Han completely ignored her. He liked the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden not because of her beauty, but rather because he had longed for her for 10,000 years. This was something that the Cloud Maiden could never compare to. 3 days finally passed. A pillar of light descended, enveloping Ling Han, who was the only one standing on the platform. Blessing of good fortune. Immediately afterward, another pillar of light descended, enveloping Qi Huangji's body. He was also blessed with good fortune. Another 4 pillars of light descended, and Faceless, the North Emperor, the Stone Emperor, and Yang Lin also received the same honor. Wasn't it said that only a king among kings could receive the blessing of good fortune? Everyone was stunned. This was far too strange. Could it be that as long as one can advance one step further from the peak stage of the pinnacle level, one will be able to receive the acknowledgement of this place? Why hasn't this happened before? It's very simple. Because the appearance of a single king tier in the past was already incredible, and no supreme king tiers had ever appeared. This time, however, 6 king tiers that surpassed the peak stage of the pinnacle level appeared at once. Even though Yang Lin had relied on alchemical pills to advance, he had indeed possessed the right to rival a king among kings during that limited time. In other words, he had been a king among kings at that time. Yang Lin and Faceless were naturally overjoyed, and they hurriedly sat down to absorb the celestial qi to their heart's content. This was something that could supplement their comprehension of regulations. The Stone Emperor and the North Emperor were also overjoyed. After all, this was the reason why they had come here. Otherwise, they wouldn't have cared about the rewards offered by the 2 imperial empires. They were the descendants and successors of saints. Only Qi Huangji was so furious that he spat out another mouthful of blood. If he had known this would happen, why would he have fought with Ling Han? Now, not only had he lost the essence divine flames, but he had also severed a few million years of his lifespan. Although he was still young and he could definitely advance to the eternal river tier. At that time, a few million years of lifespan wasn't much compared to a few 100 million years of lifespan. However, if he had no other choice, who would be willing to lose a few days of lifespan? Moreover, he had given so much, yet he still hadn't managed to snatch back the essence divine flames. Even the blessing of good fortune didn't make him feel the slightest bit happy. In short, compared to the value of the essence divine flames, everything else was insignificant. After he left, he definitely had to snatch back the essence divine flames. He definitely couldn't lose them. Celestial chi permeated the air. Unfortunately, the Cloud Maiden, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and Tuoba Dong could only watch from the sidelines, feeling envious in vain. It couldn't be helped. This was something that belonged to Supreme King Tears. Ling Han sat down in a cross-legged position and madly absorbed the celestial chi to supplement his comprehension of regulations at the various cultivation levels. Reading on his phone was even more refreshing. Chapter 1321. If they went to the Netherworld, they could, of course, also complete the regulations. However, the Netherworld only had one side of the regulations, unlike the celestial chi here. The two were integrated, and when comprehending them, the difference in effect was like heaven and earth. It could be said that comprehending in the Netherworld for 10,000 years was no match for a mere 2 hours here. Moreover, once people from the immortal realm went to the Netherworld, because the regulations they cultivated were different, they were like red suns in the darkness. Wherever they went, they would be a living target. Added with the enmity between the Netherworld and the immortal realm, they would definitely be hunted down. If Heavenly Body Tier elites couldn't kill them, they would come to Eternal River Tier, and if Eternal River Tier elites couldn't kill them, they would come to Genesis Tier. In the Netherworld, beings from the immortal realm couldn't use the power of regulations no matter how strong they were. Even if they were invincible in the immortal realm, they would only be mediocre in the Netherworld, and would die too easily. Moreover, the regulations of the Netherworld also had the effect of assimilation. If one stayed for a long time, they could indeed comprehend the regulations of the Netherworld, but the regulations of the immortal realm that they had grasped would also disappear. It was like choosing one out of two, and you could only choose one, not both. Thus, the value of this celestial chi now was astonishing. Otherwise, how could the descendants of two saints come here? There was only a mere 3 days, and the 6 of them didn't dare to waste any time. Even Qi Huangji forcibly suppressed his anger, absorbing the celestial chi and perfecting the power of regulations. This could increase their battle prowess, and more importantly, they had completed the regulations and had the foundation to break through to a higher level. Ling Han had already reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. If he didn't break through to the pinnacle level, his cultivation level couldn't possibly increase anymore. This was good. He didn't waste any energy on increasing his cultivation level and used it all to perfect his missing regulations. Previously, when he absorbed celestial chi, he perfected his regulations to the high extreme of the mountain river tier. Thus, this could increase his battle prowess slightly, but for the level of the pinnacle level of the mountain river tier, this increase was far from enough. A day later, he perfected to the pinnacle level of the mountain river tier. If he fought with Qi Huangji now, Ling Han was confident that he could suppress the latter within 100 moves. Of course, Qi Huangji had also obtained this kind of comprehension, and his battle prowess had definitely also increased greatly. Everyone's battle prowess had increased, and it would depend on who had comprehended more regulations. Another day passed, and Ling Han had perfected his regulations to the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. However, his speed was becoming slower and slower. Even if his comprehension ability was astonishing, and even if the heaven and earth were forcibly pouring in his comprehension speed, there was still a limit. 3 days later, the light pillars disappeared one by one. Ling Han stood up and opened his eyes. The scene of the stars in the sky surged before completely disappearing. He seemed incomparably ordinary, but his eyes were incomparably gentle, giving off an incomparably deep feeling. Qi Huangji and the others also stood up at about the same time. There was a look of satisfaction on their faces. In these 3 days, they had all benefited greatly. Of course, if Qi Huangji's lips did not twitch from time to time, his image would naturally be even better. Since the blessing has ended, I should be able to leave. Boom. In the blink of an eye, all 9 of them felt their bodies grow heavier as a strange power drew them toward them. In the next instant, they appeared outside the canyon of the mountain river forest. Not only them, but also the several hundred prodigies that had entered the mountain river forest before had all been sent out. This meant that the battle of the mountain river forest that occurred once every 70,000 years had completely ended. Human! A shout rang out. Qi Huangji's head of black hair soared into the sky, and a lock of white hair was extremely conspicuous. He unleashed the aura of the heavenly body tier without reservation. A ring of stars appeared. It was clearly only the size of a palm, yet it exuded a terrifying aura. It was as if anyone would be crushed into dust with a single smash. Low extreme of the heavenly body tier in the Joint Peace Planet, he could be considered a big shot, even if he was not at the peak level. And in this place, even heavenly body tier elites were qualified to be called elites. The low extreme just happened to have crossed this threshold. 4 king tiers like Qi Huangji, their battle prowess could definitely surpass 6 stars, and they could be compared to the late stage of the medium extreme or even the peak stage. More importantly, he had a saint tool in his hands. That was a super killing tool, and it could easily slaughter any heavenly body tier elite. It could even rival those at the low extreme of the eternal river tier. Ling Han frowned. Was he going to use the Black Tower? Since the 2-realm prodigy gathering has already ended, Qi Huangji, you are bullying the weak. The Stone Emperor leaped out and stood in front of Ling Han, looking like he was going to take the blame for this. Bullying the weak. Qi Huangji laughed coldly and said, I have only cultivated for 200 years, so this person is definitely above me. If I battle with him, it can also be considered bullying the weak. In the world of martial art, battles between those at the same cultivation level were naturally fair, and battles between those of the same age were also fair. The Stone Emperor couldn't help but falter. He turned around to look at Ling Han, and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Then he laughed loudly and said, Look closer, is he older than you? Qi Huangji was disdainful at first, but after sweeping his eyes over Ling Han, he couldn't help but look shocked. Previously, in the mountain river forest, there had been the effect of the mysterious power of heaven and earth, so he couldn't determine Ling Han's exact age. Now, however, he had come to the outside world and recovered his heavenly body tier power, so he could naturally determine with a glance that Ling Han's age was within 100 years. If his cultivation level was slightly higher, he would be able to accurately determine this number to within 50 years, and he would definitely be even more astonished. To immortals, 100 years really wasn't long. Most people cultivated in seclusion for more than 100 years. However, the problem was one was 100 years old, while the other was 200 years old. There was a difference of twice the age between them. With a difference of twice the cultivation time, how could they be compared? To say that it was a battle between those of the same age, that would be a joke. Qi Huangji's expression changed, but in the end he still humphed coldly and said, Fine, I won't bully the weak. Hand over the divine flames, and I will spare you this time. Next time, I will definitely not spare you. He definitely couldn't give up on the essence divine flames. What a joke, those are my spoils of battle, Ling Han said calmly. Qi Huangji, if you are not convinced, suppress your cultivation level, and we will battle at the same cultivation level. How can I defeat you again? Humph, I am tens of thousands of times more powerful than you, so why should I accommodate you? Qi Huangji smirked coldly. He no longer had any reservations about the Stone Emperor, and brazenly attacked. Impudence! The Stone Emperor roared softly. His voice transformed into a massive fist that smashed toward Qi Huangji. Qi Huangji was instantly sent flying. Poo, blood and flesh burst out from his body. He actually wasn't a match for the Stone Emperor. Wang, for heavenly bodies appeared around the Stone Emperor. He was at the consummate level of the heavenly body tier. No, he might even be at the pinnacle level of the heavenly body tier. The fifth heavenly body could be manifested or not. As expected of the son of a saint. No matter how heaven-defying Qi Huangji was, he was still limited by his cultivation level of the low extreme. How could his battle prowess compare to the consummate level? Moreover, the Stone Emperor was also a supreme king tier, so he wouldn't lose even in a battle at the same cultivation level. Damn it. Qi Huangji was bathed in blood, but he was like a crazed demon as he drew his saint tool. Wang, the ancient mirror trembled slightly, and a spot of light condensed in the center of the mirror. Chapter 1322. Xiu. The speck of light instantly transformed into a pillar of light that shot toward the Stone Emperor. You think you have a saint tool? The Stone Emperor said disdainfully. Boom. His clothes immediately lit up, forming a powerful defense. The pillar of light arrived, yet it was unable to break through the Stone Emperor's defenses. One had to know that this robe was woven from silk extracted from phoenix blood true gold. It had been refined by the Cloudstone Saint and fused with the saint's martial art will, completely activating the characteristics of saintly material. What kind of might was this? Saint tool against saint tool, the Stone Emperor didn't fall into a disadvantageous position at all. In fact, he could even fight with ease. I can't be bothered to bully you. Hurry up and fuck off. The Stone Emperor roared. They were both at the heavenly body tier, but he was at the consummate level, and he was also wielding a saint tool. However, the might unleashed by a consummate level saint tool was naturally stronger. Even though Qi Huangji had been awe-inspiring in the mountain river forest, he might not necessarily be the strongest prodigy of this generation in a true battle. For example, Ling Han had obtained first place. However, if they were to compete again, the North Emperor, Stone Emperor, Faceless, and the others would all be able to suppress him. After all, he hadn't even reached the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier yet. Qi Huangji gritted his teeth. He clearly possessed a saint tool that could kill any heavenly body tier elite, yet he couldn't do anything to a measly Sun-Moon tier cultivator. Rumble. A tremor came from beneath everyone's feet, causing them to stagger a little. What the hell? Before everyone could recover from their shock, bang, the ground beneath their feet collapsed with a loud bang, and everyone fell to the ground. Beneath their feet, there was actually an abyss, with no end in sight. This kind of change caused everyone to be baffled. However, the heavenly body tier elites all tried to fly up, yet they shockingly discovered that the regulations of heaven and earth here were too chaotic. Whether it was the cultivators of the immortal realm or the netherworld, they were all unable to use them. They could only continue to fall like the Sun-Moon tier and Mountain River tier. Only eternal river tiers could float up, and there were only a few of them. They all wore cautious expressions. This natural crater that had suddenly appeared caused them to feel a slight palpitation, and they actually did not make a move to grab Ling Han at the first instant. Otherwise, with their abilities, they would be able to save at least 1/10 of the people. Hong, a large number of people turned into angry arrows, and under the effect of gravity, their speed became faster and faster as they crashed toward the center of the earth. What was shocking was that this heavenly pit was extremely deep. They had fallen for almost 100 heartbeats, but there were still no signs of them reaching the bottom. Only the whistling of the wind in their ears grew louder and louder. At this time, those who possessed the bloodline of flying demonic beasts displayed their remarkable abilities. They spread their wings one after another and quickly controlled the direction of their descent, resisting the gravity here. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden also spread open her phoenix wings, but in order to avoid accidentally injuring others, she limited her wings to a length of 9 meters. With a flap of her wings, she flew toward Ling Han and wrapped her arms around him. "I can't fly up," she said in shock. Ling Han nodded. There was an incredible suction force in this abyss. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for them to accelerate to such an extent in such a short period of time. Let's land on the ground first. The suction force won't be so strong forever. We'll fly out when the time comes, he said. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden nodded. With a flap of her wings, she flew down towards the bottom of the abyss. She wanted to see how deep this place was. After a whole hour, the ground finally appeared in front of them. There were sharp stone pillars protruding from the ground like barbs, and many of the cultivators who had landed before Ling Han and the others had been impaled on the stone pillars. Their intestines had been pierced through, and they looked extremely wretched. Thankfully, they were all immortals, so this bit of injury was not enough to kill them. They were all doing their best to pull themselves out of the stone pillars. Hua's strong wind howled, blowing toward the cave ahead. It was this strong wind that had formed a powerful suction force. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden retracted her wings. She and Ling Han each grabbed onto a stone pillar, resisting this kind of suction force. Ling Han sized up this place. This was an underground cave, and it was very, very large. In front of them was a dark and eerie cave. Even with his eyesight, he could not see into the depths. The strong wind howled, and the force was extraordinarily strong. Ah, someone cried out in surprise. He was unable to resist the suction force of that strange wind, and was blown away by the wind. Very soon he disappeared into the pitch-black cave. Then that sound suddenly stopped and could not be heard again. The darkness here could even devour one's eyesight, and one's eyesight could not see far. It was completely impossible to see into the depths of the cave. What was going on? Not far from Ling Han, an object that was not even the size of a palm fell. However, it was extraordinarily heavy, and a terrifying shock wave rippled out. Pung, pung, pung. The stone pillars in the vicinity were instantly shattered. Fuck, I almost fell to my death. A small person crawled out. He was only 3 inches tall, and who else could it be but the Stone Emperor? He had the bloodline of a rock spirit, and even though his body was small, his weight was even heavier than a mountain. Thus, he did not need to circulate his origin power at all, and this suction force could not move him at all. It's a little strange. The North Emperor also strode over. He had already activated the treasured saber in his hand. This was a level 15 god tool, and it was the strongest treasure below Saint Tier. However, due to the limitations of his cultivation level, the North Emperor could not unleash the full might of this treasured saber. Yu Ying, the Cloud Maiden, Yang Lin, and the other king tiers also walked over. They were filled with origin power, so they did not need to hold onto the stone pillars to stabilize themselves and not be blown away by the strange wind. On the other side, the prodigies of the netherworld had also gathered together. Right now, neither side trusted the other. The netherworld thought that this was a trap set up by the immortal realm, while the immortal realm thought that it was the netherworld that had done it. However, no one knew the truth. There were continuous sounds, and some people were sucked away by the strange wind into the dark cave. After that, there was no more sound. Those who had been sucked away were all at the mountain river tier. It was obvious that they were not strong enough to resist this kind of strange wind. However, this still caused expressions of shock to appear on Ling Han and the others' faces. They naturally did not take mountain river tier cultivators seriously, but merely the strange wind was already so frightening. What other astonishing thing could happen? Humph! For eternal river tier elites appeared. On the side of the immortal realm, it was the Wide Travel Monk King and the Wind Rider Heavenly King. On the side of the netherworld, it was unclear. One was a pale-faced scholar, and the other was a burly man with a wolf's head. Both of them were astonishingly powerful. Who are you? Why are you hiding? Get out here! The Wind Rider Heavenly King roared in anger. He slashed out with his palm, and a silver river flew out, slicing toward the depths of the cave. Within the silver river, there were at least a few hundred stars that were glowing, illuminating the entire cave. In the depths of the cave, some unknown being moved, and a single strike shattered the silver river. Instantly, the cave darkened again. However, an expression of incredible astonishment appeared on Ling Han's face. He had the eye of truth, so he could see everything clearly. Meanwhile, the Stone Emperor and the other king tiers beside him, who were either stronger or had also cultivated a similar cultivation technique, also saw the scene that had flashed by in the depths of the cave. Was even more refreshing. Chapter 1324. What a terrifying aura of death, the North Emperor immediately said, a cautious expression on his handsome face. What a terrifying aura of death, the North Emperor immediately said, a cautious expression on his handsome face. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, and his expression involuntarily changed as he surveyed this land. For hundreds of millions of years, countless people have died in battle here, and their blood has all seeped into this land. This is a land of blood. Faceless grabbed a clump of soil, and his divine power surged, turning the soil and rocks into nothingness. In the end, only a grain of golden sand remained. Everyone's heart tightened. Faceless was at the peak stage of the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, and his power was comparable to the early stage of the low extreme of the heavenly body tier. However, there was still a grain of sand that hadn't been refined by him. Could this be level 9 godly metal? Huh. The North Emperor took the grain of sand from Faceless' hand and examined it closely. After a long while, he said, "This grain of sand is extraordinary." "Extremely extraordinary," the Stone Emperor said. He also grabbed a clump of soil, but after refining it this time, there was no golden sand left. He wasn't discouraged, and instead grabbed an even larger clump of soil to refine. This time, there were 2 grains of golden sand in his hand. Everyone grabbed their own clumps of soil to refine, and soon, everyone had 1 or 2 grains of golden sand in their hands. They began to examine them carefully. Ling Han was the same. Although this grain of sand didn't contain any energy, it gave him a feeling of majesty. It was as if it had once been a brick and tile of some supreme palace that had been destroyed and turned into sand. He took advantage of the time when no one was paying attention to send this grain of sand into the Black Tower for Notionless Saint to analyze. Who would have thought that the Notionless Saint would exclaim in astonishment after a single glance? Even his voice was trembling. Even though he was in the Black Tower, Ling Han could only hear some incoherent mutterings from the Notionless Saint. "Senior Notionless, what happened to you?" Ling Han asked. "I've reached heaven," Notionless Saint said in a baffling manner. Heaven? Reaching heaven in a grain of sand? This seemed like a joke, and it shouldn't have come from the mouth of a saint. "Senior, speak more clearly," Ling Han hurriedly said. However, the Notionless Saint was still spouting nonsense as if he had gone mad. He no longer bore the demeanor of a saint. Ling Han was speechless, but he also knew that this grain of sand was not simple. To be able to make a saint lose his composure like this, he must have a shocking background. Ling Han was very interested. He clenched his fist and heavily punched the ground. Pooh! Dirt flew into the air. It looked very normal, but Ling Han frowned, because the damage caused by this punch was too small. Although the immortal realm was stable, he was already standing at the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier. A single punch from him would definitely be able to topple mountains and shatter rivers. How could he possibly blast a crater that was only 9 meters in diameter? Peng, peng, peng. He threw out 17 punches, and his divine sense spread out, seeping into the earth. He discovered that the reason why the destructive power of his punches was not great was because most of the power had been absorbed by something special in the earth. It must be the golden sands. The others also noticed that something was amiss and tried it out for themselves. Soon, they also revealed looks of astonishment. This golden sand was not simple at all. What kind of place is this? More people exclaimed in astonishment. This place was far too big. Brat, hurry up and collect this sand, the more the better, the Notionless Saint said incoherently in the Black Tower. He was extremely excited. "Senior, what on earth is this?" Ling Han asked. "I don't know either," the Notionless Saint said excitedly. "However, I can confirm that if I had enough of this stuff, I would have been able to reach the medium extreme of the Genesis tier, no, high extreme, or even consummate level." Although there was only a ball of light left, it was still shining brightly, as if his expression was changing. Ling Han was astonished. He immediately spread out his hands and began to collect the soil here. He didn't have time to refine it, so he just put it all into the Black Tower. In any case, there was enough space, so there was no shortage of space. Seeing him like this, the others seemed to have been inspired, and they also began to collect the soil. They were mighty prodigies, young king tiers of the current generation, yet they were all playing with soil. If word of this got out, they would definitely laugh themselves to death. But now, whether it was Qi Huangji, Faceless, Yu Ying, the Cloud Maiden, or even the descendants of the North Emperor and Stone Emperor, they were all having a great time. Some people had just arrived, and they had no idea what was going on. However, seeing that everyone was collecting soil, they naturally followed suit. This was herd mentality. Logically speaking, prodigies should have their own opinions, but what was the situation now? Even the 9 king tiers were collecting soil, so it had to be a treasure. All of a sudden, it was as if this place was busy with farming. Everyone was in full swing, and they were full of energy. However, it didn't take long before many people stopped. It wasn't that they didn't want to collect soil, but rather that their spatial spirit tool was limited and they couldn't store it anymore. There was no other way, so they could only refine it as they collected it. In any case, no matter how large a piece of soil was, it would only produce a few grains of golden sand after being refined, so they didn't have to worry about whether their spatial spirit tool would be enough. Ling Han quickly discovered that it was almost impossible to collect all the golden sand in this place in one go, because there was far too much soil here that contained golden sand. Not only was this plain boundlessly vast, but it was also immeasurably deep underground. It was practically inexhaustible. He decided to stop and began to speculate. What if this golden sand has a source? Not only him, but the others also raised their heads, their eyes sparkling. Perhaps not everyone knew the true value of this golden sand, but even an idiot could guess that this golden sand was extraordinary. There might be a great opportunity hidden in this plain, Yi Zichen said. The mountain river forest is above here, and so is the nearby Sun Moon Valley. It would be a joke to say that the formation of these two places had nothing to do with this place. Perhaps we can unravel the secrets of the mountain river forest and Sun Moon Valley here. Everyone became excited. The mountain river forest and Sun Moon Valley only opened once every 70,000 years, and if they could unravel their secrets here, wouldn't they be able to enjoy the good fortune of heaven and earth? Ling Han and the other king tiers were even more clear. This was celestial qi, and it could allow them to comprehend the regulations of the two realms. They would truly be invincible among those at the same cultivation level. Everyone advanced. With over 10,000 people scattered here, it was practically like spilling a bowl of water into a lake, inconspicuous. However, as the news spread, not only would those who had left previously return, but even more people would come here to explore the secrets of this plain. Boom! The shock waves of a battle suddenly traveled over from the distance, but it quickly ended. Ling Han and the others exchanged a look. They could all guess that it had to be the 4 Eternal River Tier elites who had left previously. Although the battle ended very quickly, it had still taken at least a few breaths' time. What did this mean? Those 4 had encountered an Eternal River Tier opponent again. This place was dangerous. Chapter 1325. Who would have thought that there would be such a place in this galaxy? The Stone Emperor laughed loudly. He formed a hand seal, and in a short while, a miniature carriage sped over from behind. Rather than calling it a carriage, it was more like an ox carriage. After all, it was a purple gold metal ox. This was the Stone Emperor's extremely impressive carriage. The carriage and the mount were both made from a piece of saintly material, and they were indescribably extravagant. Everyone, there's no time to talk. Let's get on the carriage. The Stone Emperor leaped onto the carriage first. His figure also shrank during this process, and he became a 3-inch man. Can't you enlarge the carriage? The North Emperor asked in displeasure. This is saintly material and I can't control it. The Stone Emperor shrugged and said, "Are you guys going or not?" Everyone looked at each other before leaping onto the carriage. Their figures naturally shrank as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sitting on the carriage, but stepping on it. Stepping on a saint tool? No. 2 saint tools? Wasn't that seeking death? Especially since that purple gold metal ox was already slightly intelligent. Once it truly awakened its consciousness, it would become a saint. Who would dare to step on its head? Fortunately, it was a piece of cake for immortals to temporarily shrink their bodies. Everyone shrank to a 3-inch man, and then stood on the carriage. In reality, this was probably a chariot. The carriage didn't have a roof, and its exterior was engraved with formation patterns, exuding an ancient and heavy aura. Aside from the Stone Emperor and the North Emperor, there were only Ling Han, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, Faceless, Yang Lin, Yu Ying, the Cloud Maiden, and Zuoquan. No one else was qualified to board. Although Yu Ying didn't make it into the ranks of the 9 kings, her strength was clear for all to see. Meanwhile, Zuoquan had benefited from the Cloud Maiden. Otherwise, his heavenly body tier cultivation alone wouldn't have been enough to make the Stone Emperor look at him differently. Qi Huangji and the others naturally couldn't board the carriage. After all, they belonged to opposing forces, and it was already very restrained that they hadn't started fighting. However, they were sure that this kind of peace wouldn't be maintained for long. The chariot sped forward at an extremely fast speed. They quickly widened the distance between them and the troops behind them. They truly left them in the dust. Even king tiers like Qi Huangji and Tuoba Dong couldn't catch up. However, after walking for at least half a day, they were still in an empty plain. As far as the eye could see, there was only emptiness everywhere. There was no end at all. No one was in a hurry. The bigger this underground world was, the more shocking the secrets it contained. Geddon, the chariot suddenly jolted as if it had hit something and almost overturned. Fortunately, this was a steed forged from saintly material, so it was incredibly stable. It only jolted for a moment before the carriage regained its stability. But what on earth did he hit? One had to realize that ordinary items would be directly smashed into smithereens by that purple gold bull's ramming. That was saintly material that was almost on the verge of attaining spirit. Even if the might of its attack hadn't reached the saint level, it would at least be on par with the consummate level of the Eternal River tier. The Stone Emperor stopped the chariot, and everyone else retreated. There was a protrusion on the originally empty plain. The war chariot had run over that protrusion, causing the bumps. "There's blood," the North Emperor said gravely. Everyone focused their gazes, and saw that there was a hole in the protrusion. Blood gushed out, and a strong stench immediately wafted over. It was as if it were an old corpse that had been rotting for several hundred years. Crack. A crack instantly appeared in the ground. Then, a second crack appeared, and a third crack appeared. Like a spiderweb, the earth trembled slightly. A large hand suddenly reached out from the ground. Shockingly, this hand was formed from a large number of corpses. There was a corpse on this hand that had its stomach split open, and black pus and blood were currently flowing out. A disgusting stench exuded from this corpse. This large hand pushed off the ground, allowing its entire body to break out of the ground. Instantly, an incredibly disgusting evil creature appeared. Just like the evil creature that had been killed by the 4 Eternal River tier elites, this was also at the Eternal River tier. Although it was an evil creature, the aura it exuded was incredibly powerful. It was as if it were an evil lord. This evil creature naturally arrived at the chariot as well. Everyone immediately sucked in a deep breath. Instantly, a fierce gust of wind howled, forming a powerful suction force. Thankfully, this was an inhale, and not an exhale. Otherwise, if this thing exhaled a puff of foul air, most people would probably directly faint. The wind howled, yet everyone on the chariot remained motionless. This chariot was no ordinary chariot. Rather, it was forged from 2 pieces of saintly material. How could an Eternal River tier cultivator move it? "Die," the Stone Emperor said with a humph. He reached out and patted the edge of the chariot. Instantly, numerous formation patterns lit up, intertwining to form a dazzling circle of light. The purple gold bull opened its mouth and pew. A streak of purple light shot out, shooting toward the evil creature. This streak of light was incredibly fast, and with a pew, it struck the evil creature's chest, blasting a hole into it. However, this evil creature wasn't severely wounded. Instead, it roared in fury and swatted its massive paw at the chariot. The massive paw reached them, yet the chariot raised a barrier of light, blocking this paw. Meanwhile, Everyone on the chariot could clearly see that the massive paw was formed from 17 corpses. Some of them were missing heads, while others were missing limbs. Dark red pus and blood flowed from their bodies, and it was an extremely disgusting sight. If it weren't for this chariot, perhaps everyone here apart from the Stone Emperor would have been wiped out with a single strike. However, this chariot provided them with rock-solid protection. The purple gold bull spat out another streak of light, and it unleashed a flurry of attacks at the evil creature. After being wounded, the evil creature became more and more violent. It was filled with an aggressive nature, and it continued to attack the chariot. It had no intelligence, and under the bombardment of the purple gold bull's attacks, it was injured again and again. However, it still continued to attack, showing no signs of retreating. Although the 4 Eternal River Tier elites quickly dealt with it, that was only because the Wide Travel Monk King and the others were too powerful. Although this chariot was more extraordinary in theory, the person controlling it was only at the Heavenly Body Tier, so the might it could unleash was much weaker. After being wounded again and again, the evil creature was finally blasted into pieces, and only then was it completely destroyed. The Stone Emperor hurriedly drove the chariot away. The Stone Emperor hurriedly drove the carriage away. The stench of rot was truly too unbearable. As they continued onward, they were attacked by a few more evil creatures. Some of them were at the Eternal River Tier, while the others were at the Sun Moon Tier. However, these evil creatures were formed from a dozen or so corpses, and they didn't even have a human form. They were just slightly larger balls of flesh. After traveling for about a day, a thick fog suddenly appeared in front of them. No matter how powerful one's vision was, they couldn't see through it. The Stone Emperor stopped the chariot, and everyone looked hesitant. Should they continue onward? This place was incredibly strange, and if they continued onward, they might encounter greater danger. As long as there aren't any Genesis Tier cultivators alive, this chariot will be able to stop them, the Stone Emperor said confidently. Everyone looked at each other, and then slowly nodded. Onward. Chapter 1326. The chariot slowly moved and entered into this thick fog. This fog was really extraordinarily thick. They were standing on the chariot, and if it wasn't for the fact that the chariot itself formed a defensive circle that prevented the fog from invading, they probably wouldn't even be able to see each other. Ling Han grabbed the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's hand. If some terrifying being really appeared here, he would send his wife into the Black Tower at the first instant. As for the others, that would depend on the situation. After all, they only appreciated each other and didn't really have any friendship. The chariot advanced, the wheels rolling, and there was a loud sound of rolling earth. This was the strength of saintly material. Ling Han looked ahead, but no matter how wide he opened his eyes, even if he activated the Eye of Truth, it was useless. There was still a thick fog ahead, as if it would last forever. But as he walked, the path ahead suddenly widened, and a courtyard appeared. A youth was practicing his sword. He was clearly only 13 or 14 years old, but the aura he exuded had shockingly reached the Mountain River Tier. So shocking, he had already advanced into the Mountain River Tier at such a young age. Ling Han hurriedly shook his head. He was clearly walking in the fog, so how did he suddenly arrive in a courtyard, and a youth appeared? Where were the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and the others? Ling Han hurriedly looked around, but found that the chariot was nowhere to be seen, and there was no sign of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, the Stone Emperor, and the others. And when he shook his head and looked around, he saw that the youth had also stopped practicing his sword, and was looking left and right, his movements exactly the same as his. Could it be that he was that youth? Ling Han raised his hand, and the youth also raised his hand, his expression filled with confusion. Could it be that my spirit had left my body? Ling Han shivered, and was suddenly pulled forward by a great force, crashing towards the youth. But the youth seemed to be completely unaware, and still stood there, without the slightest intention of dodging. The two of them collided, but neither of them fell. Instead, Ling Han's whole body was like water, merging into the youth's body. At this moment, he and the youth completely merged into one. No, it was not a fusion. Apart from a name, this young man had no other memories. It was an empty space. It should be said that his soul had entered this body. His consciousness was a little blurry, and two names kept appearing in his mind. One was Ling Han, and the other was Ding Zijin. Who the hell am I? Ling Han was a little confused. His own memories were quickly fading, and the only thing left in his mind was that his name was Ding Zijin. He didn't know anything else. He gritted his teeth. He was Ling Han. This fog was an illusory formation, and it had unknowingly affected his mind. He entered the Black Tower. A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind, yet he discovered that there was no Black Tower in his body. It was as if he had really become Ding Zijin. What's going on? I'm not Ding Zijin. I'm Ling Han. Ling Han shouted loudly in his body, reminding himself that not having the Black Tower was his biggest weakness. Now that he had grasped onto it, he had not lost his original intention. Ding Zijin. A few youths walked into the courtyard. It's time to go to the clan competition. Just obediently admit defeat. Otherwise, we'll beat you until you can't cultivate for another 3 months. Hurry up and catch up. These youths were all 1 or 2 years older than him, and their strength was also slightly higher. Ling Han discovered that his cultivation level was only at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, while his opponents were at least in the medium extreme. In fact, there were even some in the high extreme and consummate level. However, Ling Han was unafraid. He had the power of 6 stars, and he had even completed his regulations, so his battle prowess should be able to break through to 6 stars. As these youths left, they passed through halls and pavilions. This place was ridiculously large, and after walking for a long time, they finally arrived at a training ground. There were already many people waiting here, young and old, male and female. Everyone's strength was also different. There were Mountain River tier, Sun Moon tier, and Heavenly Body tier. The weakest was still in the Shattering Void tier. That was an infant currently being held in his arms. Guess, wasn't he born at the Shattering Void tier? What kind of shitty place was this? He was born close to immortals. And what shocked Ling Han even more was that he saw some people occasionally flow out of the Milky Way. They were definitely elites of the Eternal River tier, yet like the others, they stayed obediently in the crowd. At the end of the training ground was a tall platform, and there were a few people sitting on it. All of their faces were obscured by mist, and they appeared very mysterious. With a single glance, Ling Han felt as if his divine sense was about to be torn apart. Too powerful. Any one of these people could definitely cover the sky with a single hand, shatter stars with a flick of their fingers, and destroy a galaxy with a single breath. Saints? Even Eternal River tiers could only stand by the side of the training ground, so the people sitting high above definitely had to be far superior in status to Eternal River tier. If they weren't saints, what could they be? Moreover, saints were divided into 4 levels, and these people were definitely not as simple as small saints. In fact, they could be great saints or saint kings. The Ding clan's year-end tournament, begin. As one person shouted, pairs of people entered the training ground and began to battle. The youngest was only 10 years old, yet shockingly also had a cultivation level at the low extreme of the Mountain River tier. This won exclamations of surprise and admiration from the spectators. As expected of Ding Yaolong, the 77th direct descendant of the Grand Ancestor. His ancestral blood is extremely pure, and he's only 10 years old, yet he's already so powerful. In the future, he'll definitely become another influential figure of our Ding clan. This youth was very powerful. He was clearly only at the low extreme of the Mountain River tier, yet he could battle against cultivators at the high extreme. In fact, after using some kind of secret technique, he was even able to defeat an opponent at the early stage of the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. 1,000 years of time. Who would have thought that Yaolong's talent would actually be so powerful? He can already use the power of time at this cultivation level. The Ding clan is truly fortunate. On the tall platform, several incredibly powerful beings all nodded in agreement, not holding back their praise. Ding Yaolong left the training ground filled with praise. After a few more battles, it was Ling Han's turn. Or rather, it was Ding Zixian's turn. His opponent was also at the low extreme, but his cultivation level was slightly higher than his. The difference between the early stage and the middle stage was that he was one of the youths who had challenged Ling Han just then. "Surrender obediently," his opponent said as he launched an attack at Ling Han. Ling Han counterattacked, yet he suddenly discovered that he had truly become a different person. His body no longer possessed powerful defenses, and his power hadn't surpassed 6 stars either. All of the secret techniques that he had mastered had disappeared. Right now, he only possessed the power of the early stage of the low extreme of the mountain river tier. Moreover, he hadn't surpassed even 1 star. After barely dodging a few attacks, Ling Han was sent flying by a kick from his opponent. When he was sent flying, his opponent even mouthed the words, "trash," his expression filled with disdain. Ling Han landed on the ground. He wanted to crawl to his feet and continue fighting, yet a wave of intense pain assaulted him. He was unable to bear it, and he instantly fainted. When he suddenly regained consciousness, he heard this kind of exclamation ringing out from all around him. He returned to his chariot. His surroundings were still shrouded in thick fog, and the heavenly phoenix Divine Maiden, Stone Emperor, North Emperor, and the others were all present. Not a single one of them was missing. So strange. Chapter 1328. The chariot continued onward, and dreams continued to assault him. This was Ding Zixian's path of growth, yet it was only marked by the end-of-year competition every year. This was probably his deepest and most painful memory. Ding Yaolong was still dazzling, and he quickly advanced to the Sun-Moon tier. His ranking in the clan competition also rose higher and higher. Meanwhile, Ding Zixian was still at the bottom, and he was still mocked and ridiculed by his clansmen every time. Year after year, when Ding Yaolong turned 16, he no longer participated in the clan competition because he had advanced to the Heavenly Body tier. The Ding clan had a rule that Heavenly Body tier elites couldn't participate in this kind of competition. However, he was still dazzling and many young women in the clan liked him. Among them was a girl that Ding Zixian had a crush on. Ding Yaolong was very playful, and he didn't reject any of the beauties in the clan. Soon, many of them became pregnant. However, he didn't plan to marry any of them. After all, he was the star of the Ding clan, so he had to marry someone of equal status. As for these women in the clan, he was just playing with them. The girl that Ding Zixian liked also became pregnant. After being rejected, she chose to end her life. This made Ding Zixian furious, and he went to fight Ding Yaolong. However, he didn't even get to see Ding Yaolong's face before he was beaten black and blue by Ding Yaolong's followers. He almost died. This caused him to lie in bed for a whole half a year before he recovered. After his injuries recovered, Ding Zixian left the clan and began to travel the world. He knew that if he stayed in the clan, he would never be able to surpass Ding Yaolong. Thousands, tens of thousands of years passed, and Ding Zixian was still a piece of trash. His cultivation level only rose from the early stage of the low extreme to the middle stage, and he gradually became middle-aged. Even in the low extreme, he only had a lifespan of 100,000 years. However, at this moment, Ding Zixian's luck finally changed. He followed a group of people to explore an ancient site. The journey was filled with dangers, and when he was the only one left, he finally obtained a divine pill. After taking the divine pill, he not only obtained an extra lifespan, but also improved his physique and talent. This was a complete transformation. Ding Zixian had been severely injured when he was still in his mother's womb. Thus, when he was born, he was only in the spiritual ocean tier, unlike the other clansmen who were born in the shattering void tier. This was a congenital deficiency that practically cut off his path of cultivation. Even when he advanced into the immortal level, he had to rely on a powerful figure of the clan to forcefully raise his cultivation level. However, after consuming this elixir, he made up for his innate deficiency and started to rise. His previous efforts had transformed into a steady accumulation. In a mere 10 years, he had risen from the middle stage of the low extreme to the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. However, his progress didn't slow down because of this. Another 100 years passed, and Ding Zixian advanced to the Heavenly Body tier. After another 1,000 years, he became an eternal river tier elite. At this point, Ding Zizhen could still be considered a prodigy even if he were to take into account the tens of thousands of years that he had spent here into account. Furthermore, he was a top-tier prodigy. It had only been 50,000 years, and he had reached the eternal river tier. But this was not the most exaggerated thing. Another 10,000 years passed, and he became a sage. Hiss the Stone Emperor and the others once again awoke from their dreams. All of them wore expressions of intense astonishment. In the dream, Ding Zizhen had left his clan a long time ago. As such, they had no idea what cultivation level Ding Yaolong, a super genius, had reached in the end. However, he had become a saint in just 60,000 years. This was unparalleled in the world. My father was born from a heavenly cloud rock, the Stone Emperor said solemnly. He was nurtured by heaven and earth for close to 10 billion years before developing intelligence. After that, he used another 200 million years to finally advance to the Genesis tier. My master achieved Tao in 300 million years, the North Emperor said. With this comparison, it was clear that Ding Zizhen was a freak. Could it be that a saint had once appeared in our galaxy, and he died here? Or perhaps he set up some kind of trap here, and that's why the mountain river forest and Sun-Moon Valley exist? Filled with doubt and anticipation, they continued forward and entered the dream again. After Ding Zizhen reached the Saint King tier, he returned to the Ding clan and challenged Ding Yaolong again. This time, he was no longer Ding Yaolong's follower, and he finally clashed with Ding Yaolong. The two of them battled, and they both unleashed their mystical techniques. However, Ding Yaolong's secret technique of time instantly overwhelmed Ding Zizhen. This was despite the fact that he had also grasped such a terrifying technique. In fact, his body was corroded by the passage of time, and he had lost at least hundreds of millions of years of lifespan. Ding Zizhen was powerful, but Ding Yaolong was the true king tier. However, even though Ding Zizhen suffered a crushing defeat in this battle, he also received the attention of his clan. He was heavily nurtured, and a marriage was arranged for him. The bride's clan was extremely powerful, and they could rival the Ding clan. Moreover, his fiancée was also a prodigy. The two clans agreed that when Ding Zizhen advanced one step further, they would allow him to marry. Advance one step further? Everyone came to their senses again, and they looked at each other. They were all so shocked that they couldn't speak. Ding Zizhen was already a Saint King, so how could he advance one step further? However, Ling Han was completely sure. The Ding clan was a force of the celestial realm, so it was natural that elites above the Genesis tier would appear in their ranks. Moreover, they were born at the Shattering Void tier, and advancing to the immortal level in a few years. This was also acceptable. After all, Hunyo was even more astonishing. She had become a saint in 5 years. Everyone hurriedly continued to drive. They wanted to know whether Ding Zizhen had advanced or not, and what cultivation level was after becoming a saint. This time, even a prodigy like Ding Zizhen failed to advance even after a long time. Ding Yaolong was even more talented, but he also fell into silence. These two people were now known as the twin dragons of the Ding clan. They represented the future of the Ding clan. After over 1 billion years, Ding Yaolong was the first to break through, and after another 30 million years, Ding Zizhen also advanced to a whole new level. Severing mundane tier, this was the cheer of the members of the Ding clan in their dreams. In a mere 30 million years, the Ding clan had produced 2 severing mundane tier grand elders, causing the strength of the Ding clan to improve greatly. The severing mundane tier was divided into 4 minor levels, which were the low extreme, medium extreme, high extreme, and consummate level. It was said that one had to sever their mortal thoughts, and this was done a total of 4 times. Only after severing their mortal thoughts would they be able to accumulate celestial chi, live as long as heaven and earth, and wither with the universe. This time, Ding Zizhen was in complete seclusion. After finally reaching the severing mundane tier, he came out of seclusion to travel the world. This was his single life before he got married. After that, he would stay in the clan and shoulder the heavy responsibility of an ancestor. However, while he was traveling, he coincidentally encountered a woman, and the two of them fell in love at first sight. However, Ding Zixian's fiancée was renowned for her domineering nature, so Ding Zixian didn't dare to bring her back to the Ding clan. Instead, they simply stayed together. They stayed together for over 30,000 years. In the end, Ding Zixian didn't return to the Ding clan. Instead, he chose to conceal his identity and retreated to the mountains with his beloved woman, enjoying the tranquil scenery. After another 40,000 years, his wife gave birth to a daughter for him, and she named her Ding Ling. However, it was at this time that his fiancée finally found him. She discovered that he had broken his engagement, married another woman, and had given birth to a daughter. She naturally flew into a rage, and while Ding Zixian was away, she personally killed his wife and daughter. Everyone woke up again, and tears streamed down their faces. This wasn't because of their emotions, but rather because they were affected by Ding Zixian. They couldn't help but feel great sorrow and pain, and it was as if their hearts were about to be torn apart. Chapter 1329. Was this Ding Zixian's lingering resentment? Above saints, the severing mundane tear, and the lingering resentment he had left behind hadn't dissipated even after billions of years. Now, it reappeared one after another. Saints aren't the strongest? Apart from Ling Han, everyone else was trembling. This completely destroyed their preconceived notions, and they couldn't accept it. Saints were the strongest beings in this universe, and only saints could defeat saints. Was this fake? Was this something that Ding Zixian had made up? Even the Stone Emperor and the North Emperor couldn't come to a conclusion. After all, if they accepted this view, then the entire order of martial art would have to be reconstructed. Only Ling Han's heart was firm. This was because he already knew that there was a celestial realm above the immortal realm. It belonged to this realm, yet it was also higher than this realm. Hold on, if the immortal realm had a celestial realm, then wouldn't the netherworld have a demonic realm or something? No, if one wanted to enter the celestial realm, they needed to fuse the regulations of the two realms. In other words, they needed to be both saints and demon masters. Since that was the case, then the place that was blasted open should be the same. Regardless of whether it was the great elites of the netherworld or the immortal realm, they would ultimately have to enter the celestial realm. Celestial Qi contained the regulations of both the immortal realm and the netherworld. A thought flashed in Ling Han's mind. It was as if he had discovered an important point, but he couldn't grasp it no matter how hard he tried. This made him feel incredibly frustrated. What happened after that? Everyone wanted to know more, so they continued to drive the chariot to enter the dreamscape again. Sure enough, the chariot only advanced for a short distance before the dreamscape came again. Ding Zixian returned, and found that his wife and daughter had died. He was naturally in great grief, and a rain of blood fell from the sky. The entire galaxy dimmed, and even the sun was extinguished by the rain of blood. The entire galaxy became a dead star. Was this the power of a saint? There was no targeting at all. He merely cried, and an entire galaxy became a graveyard. Ding Zixian returned to his hometown, and killed his fiancée's clan. He personally killed her, and obtained a treasure from her clan. He brought it back to the grave of his wife and daughter. However, he was also pursued by two major clans. In order to repair their relationship with the other clan, the Ding clan sent Ding Yaolong to pursue him. In the bloody battle, Ding Zixian was severely injured, and suffered an incurable Dao injury. Although he had managed to escape, he did not have long to live. He buried himself and slept with his dead wife forever, but he used the treasure he brought from his fiancée's house on his daughter. After a few years, his daughter's soul would be reunited and she would have a chance at reincarnation. Whoosh! Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. In their dreams, they had witnessed the final battle between Ding Yaolong and Ding Zixian. It had been far too terrifying. A casual gust of wind had blown past, and many large planets had been destroyed. Countless living beings had been killed in an instant. Even saints don't have such power, the North Emperor said resolutely. Although my master is only a small saint, even a saint king would need to unleash a powerful technique to destroy a planet. Just a single shockwave from the battle between the two of them caused a star that was boundlessly far away to collapse. This is definitely not something that a Saint King can do, the Stone Emperor said. Everyone nodded slowly. Now, they could confirm that there was indeed another cultivation level above Saint Tier, and that was the Severing Mundane Tier. However, according to Ding Zixian's dream, there was a considerable number of Severing Mundane Tier elites in his hometown. Just the Ding clan alone had around 10, and his fiancée's clan also had around this number. This was far too terrifying, wasn't it? Even in a galaxy, there would only be one saint at most. However, their clan actually had around 10 beings above Saint Tier? What kind of place was that? Celestial realm? Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. Ding Zixian had come from the celestial realm, and that was why there were so many elites there. Moreover, judging from the pyramid of elites, Severing Mundane Tiers definitely couldn't be the strongest force in the celestial realm. Otherwise, it would be far too heaven-defying for a clan to have around 10 top-notch elites. Since you've all come, it means that my daughter is about to complete her soul gathering. A voice suddenly traveled over. Everyone felt that this voice was indescribably familiar. It was Ding Zixian. In their dreams, they had all been Ding Zixian, so they were naturally extremely familiar with this voice. Complete the final step for me and help my daughter reincarnate. In return, you can obtain a celestial technique that I've left behind. Its name is Tide of the Ages, Ding Zixian said. This wasn't a voice, but rather a divine sense that was transmitted directly into their minds. This was an obsession that Ding Zixian had left behind countless years ago, and it wouldn't dissipate until his daughter was saved. Instantly, everyone was filled with intense excitement. Celestial technique, Tide of the Ages, wasn't that a secret technique that Ding Yaolong had once used? It was a secret technique of the Ding clan that could instantly cause time to flow by 10 million times, causing attacks and living beings to age. This could be said to be one of the most top-notch defensive techniques, as well as the most terrifying offensive technique. In the past, Ding Yaolong had relied on this secret technique to surpass 2 minor levels and defeat his opponent. At that time, he hadn't even reached the pinnacle level, yet he had surpassed 8 stars. This was inconceivable. Theoretically speaking, power that surpassed 6 stars could only be obtained after advancing to the pinnacle level. Once one advanced to a higher major level, their power would fall back to 6 stars. No, this was a secret technique, not power. The two did not conflict with each other. They definitely had to obtain it. All of a sudden, everyone began to feel enmity toward each other. Who wouldn't want such a secret technique for themselves? However, Ling Han said, "Why don't we first find the location of this senior Ding's beloved daughter?" Since Ding Zixian was willing to give them such astonishing benefits, reincarnation wouldn't be simple either. It was too early to start internal strife at this time. Everyone here was a king tier. Aside from Zuoquan and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, their self-control was naturally top-notch. Very soon, they all nodded, suppressing their greed. There was no rush. The chariot advanced again, but they didn't enter the dreamland again. Ding Zixian had already told them everything that he wanted them to understand. Moreover, they also learned some details. For example, why the mountain river forest and Sun Moon Valley were separated by over 30,000 and 40,000 years. That was because Ding Zixian and his beloved wife had been in love for over 30,000 years before marrying, and then gave birth to a daughter after over 40,000 years. This was also a part of his obsession. Why did there be celestial qi? That was because Ding Zixian came from the celestial realm. In fact, he was even a celestial. He had persisted for millions of years, all for the sake of his beloved daughter. However, were the evil beings born here also related to Ding Zixian? That should be the case. This was the two-realm battlefield, where blood, dead souls, and corpses intertwined. Added with Ding Zixian's Severing Mundane Tier will, it didn't seem strange that some Eternal River Tier evil beings were born. At least the golden sand was possibly formed from Ding Zixian's flesh and blood, and it was imprinted with the will of a celestial's martial art. Naturally, even saints would be stunned. However, since they could enter the dreamland, the 4 Eternal River Tier elites ahead of them should have also obtained the same information. Quick! Their eyes lit up, and they hurriedly urged the Stone Emperor to speed up the chariot. Long, the chariot rolled over. There were almost no opponents below Saints, and it was unstoppable. After about a day, the fog dissipated, and a mountain appeared in front of them. It was as if it had been forcibly cut out by someone, and it was a very regular rectangular shape. That's not a mountain, but a coffin. Chapter 1330. The mist dissipated, revealing a coffin that was as large as a mountain. Everyone wasn't surprised by this. After all, they had entered the dream and knew that Ding Zizhen had buried his beloved daughter. Moreover, they had come here to help Ding Ling reincarnate. If the dead weren't buried in a coffin, where would they be buried? However, this coffin was far too large. It was 3,000 meters tall and 3,000 meters long. People would definitely believe it if they said that it was a mountain. There were 4 people standing on the other side of the coffin. They were standing some distance away from each other, but each of them exuded an incredibly powerful aura. It was as if they were the center of the universe wherever they stood. The Wind Rider Heavenly King, the Wide Travel Monk King, the Pale-Faced Scholar, and the Wolf-Headed Brawny Man were 4 Eternal River Tier elites. Sure enough, they had set out earlier, so they naturally arrived first. More importantly, they were also quite courageous. After all, not everyone dared to enter that dream repeatedly. What if they never woke up? Their divine sense would leave their body, and their physical body would slowly dry up. In the end, they would die. Now that we're here, let's rely on our own abilities. Little Han, come to the Universal Tao Galaxy to play when you're free, the Stone Emperor said. Oh, that's right. In another 100 years or so, the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy of the Myriad Directions Galaxy will be recruiting students. The prodigies of the hundreds of galaxies will all gather, and they'll compete for a mere 100 spots. I hope that you'll be able to join them at that time. The North Emperor also smiled at Ling Han. He was very fond of Ling Han. Even though one of them was the son of a saint, while the other was the disciple of a saint, their chances of becoming a saint in the future were infinitely close to 0. Eternal River Tier wasn't difficult, but becoming a saint was practically impossible. The higher one's cultivation level was, the more difficult it was for the older generation to produce a successor that could rival their own, let alone surpass them. Meanwhile, Ling Han had a very high chance of becoming a saint. Thus, even with their status, the two of them were still very cordial toward Ling Han. They didn't put on the airs of heavenly body tier elites, nor did they reveal the arrogance of descendants of saints. They were purposefully lowering themselves. Star Sand Martial Arts Academy, Ling Han looked confused. The Star Sand Martial Arts Academy was founded by the Star Sand Saint. He's a great saint, and in the 10 billion years that the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy has been founded, a total of 8 saints have emerged from it, the North Emperor explained. 9 is the limit. Even the Star Sand Saint has said that he won't take any more disciples after taking in 1 more personal disciple. This is because he can't possibly produce a 10th saint. Thus, all of the prodigies are racking their brains to enter the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy and become a disciple of the Star Sand Saint. They want to become his 9th disciple and become a saint, the Stone Emperor continued. Yang Lin, the Cloud Maiden, and Yuing all heard it clearly, and they all looked tempted. Great sages Ijbi Yunshi and Sage Qinghai were also sages, but they were just minor sages. Although they were strong enough to look down on the world, compared to great sages, they were like the difference between heaven and earth. If it weren't for the fact that they couldn't let go of their pride, it was likely that Bi Yunshi and Qinghai Saint would be willing to become a disciple of the Star Sand Saint. Perhaps they would have a chance to advance to the medium saint tier. Otherwise, they would be stuck at the small saint tier for the rest of their lives. There was nothing that could be done. At this level, cultivation techniques had long since been severed, and martial arts techniques had also reached the limit. If they encountered any problems, they could only solve them by themselves. There was no one to ask for help, and even if they had a lifespan of 1 billion years, it would still be exhausted. If they could become a disciple of the Star Sand Saint, then they would truly soar into the sky. Ling Han nodded slowly and said, "All right, I'll definitely go to the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy within 100 years. Then we'll meet again at that time. The Stone Emperor laughed loudly and said, "However, I won't let you have this opportunity." He steered the chariot and flew toward the top of the ancient coffin. A chariot of this level naturally possessed the ability to fly. Possessing this chariot was his greatest source of confidence. Even if 4 Eternal River Tier elites attacked him, he wouldn't be afraid. Xiao, the chariot reached the top of the ancient coffin and then disappeared. Ling Han and the others also spread out, searching for the secrets of this ancient coffin from different angles. This dead person was definitely inside the coffin, and if they wanted to revive the dead, they naturally had to bring the person out of the coffin. Thus, the first step was to find out how to open the coffin, or rather, how to enter it. Ling Han naturally followed the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. They walked around the ancient coffin and saw that there were densely packed symbols on the coffin's body. They looked a bit like formation patterns, and also a bit like divine patterns formed by the will of martial art. However, after walking around the coffin, they didn't find any clues to open the coffin or enter it. Could it be at the top? Ling Han wanted to climb up. In this strange place, he still didn't have the ability to leap 3,000 meters and jump onto the top of the ancient coffin. However, as long as he borrowed some strength from the coffin's body, climbing up would be a piece of cake. However, when he leaped up high and was just about to step onto the coffin's body, a powerful chill rose up in his heart. It was as if he would be consigned to eternal damnation if he kicked out. He forcibly retracted his foot, and his body landed. Ping! He smashed a hole in the ground. "What's wrong?" the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden asked in confusion. Before Ling Han could answer, they heard a scream in the distance. A person also wanted to climb up the coffin like Ling Han, but when he pressed his palm onto it, he was directly shattered into pieces. Blood danced through the air like a cloud of blood. Gasp! Although that person wasn't some supreme elite, he was still at the Sun Moon tier. Yet he actually died from a single touch. This coffin was dangerous. At the same time, a violent sound rang out in the sky. They saw a chariot descend from the sky. It was the Stone Emperor's chariot, but now, the purple gold bull was missing a horn, and one side of the chariot was also missing a piece of plate armor. Ling Han's expression changed. Those were all saintly material, yet they had actually been damaged. It was evident how powerful this ancient coffin was. Ding Zijin was a celestial. Since that was the case, then what was so strange about the collapsed saintly material? "Oh no, my father is definitely going to beat me to death now," the Stone Emperor screamed. This chariot naturally didn't belong to him. Rather, he had secretly driven it out to look cool. In his opinion, it was only a trip to a galaxy that was lacking in martial art, so it was naturally impossible for the chariot to be damaged. After all, there were no saints in this galaxy. But great, there were indeed no saints, and they fucking had celestials, which were even more awesome. Now that the chariot was damaged, it was irreparable, so its might would definitely be affected. When he returned, he would definitely be taught a terrible lesson by his father. Meanwhile, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was filled with lingering fear. If Ling Han hadn't pulled back in time just then, he would definitely have been blasted into a rain of blood by now. Didn't he see that all saintly material was unreliable? Ling Han frowned and said to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, "Bring me up." The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden nodded and spread her phoenix wings. Then she grabbed Ling Han and flew into the air. The two of them arrived above the ancient coffin and carefully examined it. However, this ancient coffin seemed to be one, and they couldn't even find the gap between the lid and the coffin. And even if there was a gap, who would dare to reach over and open the lid? Strange, there's no way to enter, so how can I help Ding Zijin's daughter reincarnate? Ling Han originally thought that there would be a passage to enter from above, but with the sensitivity of his spiritual sense, he could say with certainty that there was absolutely no entrance. Otherwise, the Stone Emperor wouldn't have tried to force his way through. In the end, even his saint-level war chariot was destroyed. What should I do? Chapter 1332. In the Sun Moon tier, Ling Han really didn't need to cultivate to accumulate origin power. The Berserk Blood Spirit pill could perfectly solve this problem. Moreover, others could only ingest one pill after a few years, but he only needed 3 months. Thus, Ling Han only refined pills, refined golden sand, and studied the symbols on the ancient coffin to increase his comprehension. He moved a large amount of soil into the Black Tower. In the Black Tower, his power was even greater, and he could easily refine the golden sand. Ha! Small Tower appeared and exclaimed in surprise, "There's a celestial-level martial art intent on it. Perhaps a celestial died here, and his flesh and blood have affected this land." Ling Han nodded. Small Tower trembled slightly and didn't speak immediately. It was as if it was observing the sand. After a while, it said, "If you can obtain a large amount of this sand, I can extract a celestial technique from it." Ling Han's heart trembled and he asked, "What celestial technique?" "It's related to time, and I'll only know the specifics after extracting it," Small Tower said. Gasp, wasn't this the secret technique of the Ding clan, the Tide of the Ages? Ling Han couldn't help but feel excited. This was the bloodline secret technique of the Ding clan. Every member of the Ding clan could naturally grasp it when their cultivation level reached a certain level, or when their bloodline was naturally powerful. Perhaps this was also why this secret technique was imprinted in Ding Zixian's body. Even if his soul had disappeared, it still existed in his blood, fusing with this land, and was imprinted here. Even if ordinary people knew this, so what? For example, Notionless Saint could only obtain inspiration from it. From small saint to medium saint, or even great saint, he definitely couldn't derive the secret technique of time. Only the Black Tower could do this, because it was definitely a supreme precious treasure even in the celestial realm. Ling Han was instantly greatly motivated, and he began to collect soil while most people were comprehending beside the ancient coffin. Meanwhile, in the Black Tower, grains of golden sand appeared and piled up into a small mountain. "Is it enough?" he asked. "Not enough," Small Tower said. "Is it enough?" "Not enough." Just like that, Ling Han continuously moved the sand. After a whole 3 months had passed, Small Tower finally reluctantly nodded its head, saying that it could give it a try. After all, this golden sand had only been stained with some celestial blood. After who knew how many years had passed, the will of the martial art within it had long since begun to dissipate. If it wasn't for the fact that this immortal art just happened to be related to time, it would have been impossible for it to be preserved until now. Ling Han went to temper his body in the immortal flame, while Small Tower extracted the secret technique, Tide of the Ages, from the golden sand. 3 days later, Ling Han had transformed into a 10-year-old boy. He was not far from mastering the rising from the ashes. Next, he would naturally consume the Berserk Blood Spirit pill and increase his cultivation by another level. "Late Supreme Stage, take it," Small Tower said. A speck of light flew over, emitting a light that was even brighter than the sun. However, it did not cause the uncomfortable feeling of being burned and blinded. "Have you extracted it?" Ling Han asked. Because there is too little will of the martial art, only one link was extracted. If you cannot use this to comprehend it, then you will have to gather this much more golden sand, Small Tower said. That would be around 3 months of hard work. Ling Han nodded. He wanted to grasp it in one go. Bringing this speck of light with him, Ling Han arrived under the reincarnation tree. Then, he pressed the speck of light against the top of his head and began to comprehend it. His consciousness instantly rumbled, as if a tsunami had formed, threatening to pierce through the top of his head. That speck of light evolved in his consciousness. It was indescribably huge, and when Ling Han looked closely, he saw that there were countless vortexes within the ball of light. As they spun, Ling Han felt as if he could see the birth and destruction of many celestial bodies. Billions of years passed in the blink of an eye. This was the evolution of time, revealing the secrets of heaven and earth. Ling Han tried to touch it with his hand. Instantly, the ball of light dispersed, spreading to the entire consciousness. Then, it began to dissipate one after another. It disappeared without a trace and could no longer be studied. Ling Han hurriedly began to comprehend it. under the reincarnation tree, he had close to 400 times more time than others. He did not believe that he could not grasp this secret technique even if he had 400 times more time. Even if he could only grasp it in one go and understand the general idea, he could slowly study the details. Right now, he only wanted to grasp a form. Time passed quietly, and more than a month had passed. Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes. "Time," he said softly. He teleported to another corner of the Black Tower and pressed a finger on a large tree. Instantly, the leaves of this large tree withered and fell to the ground. In the time it took for an incense stick to burn, it had completely died of old age. I can be considered to have grasped the basics. With a single finger, I can cause someone to lose several thousand years of lifespan in 30 minutes. However, this is complete aging and not accelerated ripening. Otherwise, this tree should have bloomed and borne fruit, but there was no such process, and it directly died of old age. Although I can use the power of time, I am too weak now. Even if I want to cause someone in the low extreme of the mountain river tier to die of old age, I will need to continuously use it for an entire day. With my current cultivation level, there is no way I can maintain it for such a long time. What a pity! If I could be like Qi Huangji and stop time, that would be great. Ling Han couldn't help but feel rueful. They were both mysterious powers of time, but aging and stopping were completely different concepts. If he could stop time, even for a short instant, it would be extremely effective in battle. On the other hand, if he wanted to use Tide of the Ages to its peak, he would need at least a few 100 million years. Otherwise, against Eternal River Tears and Genesis Tears, reducing their lifespan by several thousand or several hundred years would be nothing. Hold on, could aging be considered a curse? For those below the immortal level, even Shattering Void Tier cultivators only had a lifespan of 1,000 years. If they were affected by Tide of the Ages, it would be fine as long as 100 years of their lifespan was reduced. 10 times and they would be done for. Ling Han's thoughts scattered, and he thought of many things in this moment. Ling Han, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, suddenly said, "I am about to break through." Ling Han was startled for a moment, and hurriedly brought her out of the Black Tower. Hong long, thunderclouds gathered, and the heavenly tribulation was about to descend. "Let's cross it together," he said with a smile. It was a good chance for him to increase the power of his heavenly might. Meanwhile, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was both touched and nervous and said, "Please don't. The heavenly tribulation is too terrifying, and I'm confident that I can survive it. I don't need your help." She was afraid that Ling Han would be injured. Hee. Ling Han couldn't help but feel secretly pleased when he saw this. He didn't expose the fact that he wasn't afraid of the heavenly tribulation at all. Instead, he simply wanted to comprehend his own Tao through the heavenly tribulation. Wrapping his arms around the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, he fiercely kissed her. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden's eyes instantly widened. She felt that Ling Han was far too absurd. He actually still had such thoughts at a time like this. Quang, a bolt of lightning struck down. It was as if even the heavens couldn't take it anymore and wanted to strike Ling Han to death. Ling Han held up the sky with one hand. The heavenly lightning fell, but it couldn't even hurt a hair on his body. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was instantly dumbfounded. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.